Chapter 773 A Much Valuable Battle. Chapter 773 A Much Valuable Battle. A big lake that looked like a clear shining mirror was situated in the corner of the Purgatory Star. This lake was so crystal clear that people could see its bottom. Conical mountains surrounded this lake. Those mountains weren't too high, as they were around 1,000 meters more or less. Observation pavilions were built on each mountain. Beautiful maids and guards were serving the powerful officials of the divine nation. At this moment, Du Tianlu and the 5 feudal vassals Leona, Ao, Guduo, Carthu, Rochester, and Alay were sitting neatly in different luxury pavilions to enjoy good food and wine. The 5 feudal vassals had their retinue standing by their sides. They didn't say anything, but they were allowed to enjoy the food and wine with their masters. Du Tianlu smiled tenderly. He stooped, looking at the lake underneath. A strange crown sparkled in his hand. It radiated beams of light shooting directly into the lake. After the strange light shot into the crystal lake, it changed magically. Images started to appear on the lake. The extreme purgatory field on the other side of the Purgatory Star became the images projected on the lake's surface. Layers of mountain ranges, large lakes, murmuring rivers and streams, and vast, luxuriant forests were projected gradually. Even the lowest positions were shown clearly. This lake was a giant mirror that was transferring what was happening in the extreme purgatory field to this place. Everybody standing on the surrounding mountains could see the details of the battles taking place in the extreme purgatory field. At this moment, the lake mirror was showing some fierce battles. Ao Gera was the outstanding contestant who had already started to hunt inmates in the forest. Ao Gera and the other 2 warriors under Ao Guduo were coldly surrounding 2 prisoners at a mountain foot. Those 2 prisoners were at the second sky of King Godrealm. At this moment, they were hurt badly, and they were trying with their last breaths to run away. Ao Gera was deliberate, even though he was busy. A gleam of arrogance sparkled in his eyes. He laughed like a howling, hungry wolf, gazing at one of the 2 prisoners. The other 2 subordinates of Ao Guduo were joining hands to kill the other. They were all calm, just like a hawk eyeing a sheep on the ground. Shortly, they stormed over with brutal deeds. They used clusters of scorching light to block the man and torture him to death. Ao Gera's battle also ended shortly. When his god domain expanded, people could see a glorious gold halo rippling like water, extending everywhere. Wherever his gold light crossed through, everything was smashed. Ancient trees, big rocks, and even the rivers were exploded. The sharp gold energy had swept everything away as easy as breaking the dried branches of a tree. The warrior, who had the same realm as Ao Gera, was blockaded in his god domain. Shortly, the gold halo bound him. Frightening bleeding cuts appeared thickly on his god body. That man resisted hard. He released his god domain, which created a pressing energy wave. Ao Gera faced the sky and shouted. The gold energy on his body slashed down from the sky like a sharp golden sword showering the land. When Ao Gera used his true power, his entire body was covered in a gold nimbus, giving people a brutal and vicious feeling that he could fiercely crush everything into pieces. Bunches of gold energy, light, shot out from him, breaking that prisoner's god domain. The bleeding cuts on his body also exploded at once. Instantly, that man became a bloody corpse, as if he had been executed with the 10,000 cut sentence. His death was terribly pathetic. Ao Gera had been nonchalant from the beginning. He didn't even bother to look the dead man, spat, mumbled something, then leaped up. His figure flashed, and he gathered with his 2 other teammates. They continued hunting. The lake was projecting the same battle which was happening with the 3 young people of Leona's team. All 3 had a bloody aura. Their eyes were wild and brutal. They looked like the devils in hell, just like their master. Bloody, murderous aura shot up to the sky. The pupils of the only woman in that team of 3 showed a frightening faint color. The onlookers didn't know what secret technique she was cultivating, but on her way, murderous aura had condensed into real entities, turning into a dozens of meters blood python. It was animated and lively like a real object. It stuck its tongue out, facing the sky, emitting a tremendous energy fluctuation. The woman who used to mock Yen hid her hands in her sleeves, strolling as if she was taking a walk in her garden. And she just sauntered behind her blood python like that. The python was like a real beast. Whenever it sensed signs of living beings, it would savagely dash away. This bloodthirsty commotion froze the prisoners, making them unable to run. Shortly, the python had swallowed 3 prisoners. After 1 hour, the python would open its big mouth and spit out a bloody skeleton. The flesh on the skeleton seemed to be butchered. Extremely horrible. No one could resist this woman on her way. She hadn't performed any attack, but using only a blood python she had condensed from the bloodthirsty, murderous aura. She had made the inmates snacks for her python. Experts of Carthew's and Rochester's teams hadn't encountered enemies yet. High Realm prisoners had avoided them proactively, as if they knew those 4 people weren't easy to mess with. They had tried their best to stay away from them. Demeng, son of Delay, had the peak of true God realm. However, the beasts flew out of his soul altar were all formidable. On his way, he didn't need to move his hands. People ran away as soon as they saw his beasts. Demeng was at the peak of true God realm, like Yen. His path was smooth, and he hadn't had a chance to show his talents. The experts sitting in the mountains to watch the fun shown in the lake all concentrated on the battles in the mirror. Ah! Du Tian Lu suddenly screamed. A strange light flashed in his eyes as he focused on an isolated area. The blood crown on his hand sparkled. The area he was watching was zoomed in so many times. Everything there became clearer. Leona, Ao Guduo, Carthew, Rochester, and Delay. The 5 great feudal vassals became interested in that scene. Their eyes like electric strikes shot at that area. Yan's figure appeared clearly in that area. At this moment, he was dashing crazily from the hill toward the 3 Sea Clan prisoners that the Een spirit, Ghost Flame, had sensed. Haha, whole life star. Interesting. Interesting. I should watch carefully. Rochester laughed noisily. His eyes skimmed through Leona and Ao Guduo. Delay was shaken. He had a concealed gleam of hope in his eyes, as if he hated that he couldn't make Yen bury his body in the extreme purgatory field, and that the young man would never be able to get out of the extreme purgatory field alive. Carthew slightly frowned. Haha, that boy doesn't have a good fortune. Seems Ao Gara won't need to take action. But I think he got good luck now. If he meets Ao Gara, he will die in the worst way. Ao Guduo received the strong liquor the maid served him. He gulped several mouthfuls, laughing loudly. Leona wore a cold and sinister face. Her eyes were as sharp as icicles. She beamed a faint smile. Are you blind? Don't you see that Yan's the one who proactively takes action? Yeah, that kid has taken action first. 1 on 3, people. And his opponents are the King God Realm experts. Is he insane? Does he have any tremendous background? Du Tian Lu continued, then took a sip of his wine, his eyes strange. He's a madman. Mwahaha. Dares to boast, arrogantly saying that he would kill me within 100 years. Isn't that crazy? Ao Guduo finished a bottle of strong wine and threw it away. That bottle exploded in the air. He bared his teeth. His craziness appeared on his face. Who dares say to kill me within 100 years in the divine nation? I've been moving unhindered around the universe for years. I've seen so many different characters. He's just an ant. That mother asterisk cur is telling jokes. He was still holding on to what Yen had bragged. He couldn't just let it go no matter what. If I want to kill you, no need to wait for 100 years, my dear. As long as our king nods his head, I'll kill you. Leona smiled coldly like a devil, snapping back. Try me. Aoguduo was enraged, his face ferocious. Haha, don't think that because you're ranked over me means you can actually defeat me. When I, Aoguduo, had topped the feudal vassals, you were still struggling to be a feudal vassal. If the king didn't notice you, you mother asterisk her, you would have died in my hands already. I do hope that the king would agree, so then I can cut your head off and make a nice chamber pot. Leona laughed like crazy. Her dark green eyes were filled with bloodthirsty intentions. Guys, could you please quiet down so we can watch the battle? Carthu, rubbing his forehead, couldn't help but scream. Du Tian Lu also advised them with his soft voice. You've made a bet already. Just calm down and watch it. It's a whole life star, you know. You should pay attention. Don't be hurried. Hearing him, Leona and Aoguduo snorted in unison, then stopped quarreling. Their look fell on the lake underneath again to watch the clear scene projected. At this moment, Shi Yan had faced the 3 Sea Clan prisoners. Their eyes locked. Sparks shot everywhere. A dark firmament star. Deep inside the vast, grand palace sat on the throne a tall and sturdy man wearing brocade clothes. He looked at something in front of him. Zi Yao sat cross-legged next to him. Her beautiful eyes gazed at something. A magical mirror appeared in the middle of the hall, which showed Shi Yan and the 3 Sea Clan prisoners. Is that him? The man frowned, asking all of a sudden. Are you sure he and the other have some relations? It's true. Their powers of Upanishad are alike, the soul burial ground, Xiao confirmed. The man nodded, grinning faintly. Interesting. I need to watch carefully. If we can use him, he will be a sharp sword of the divine nation. I hope he would be like what you say, outstanding will and persistence. About his shallow cultivation base, it's all right. We can increase him gradually. The most important feature of a warrior is his fighting will. I need to watch carefully then. Father, you won't be disappointed. Zi Yao said anxiously as she was praying that Shi Yan could debut better and surprise the others. That would make them appreciate him. It seemed his performance this time would determine his death or life and his future. Chapter 774, Rip the Sky. Chapter 774, Rip the Sky. It was out of Shi Yan's expectation that the 3 prisoners were more excited than he was when Shi Yan appeared. The inmate marks on the faces of those one-eyed Sea Clan prisoners twisted as they were laughing crazily and excitedly. God loves the 3 of us. Yes, it's God's love for us. Our first encounter is a lone warrior, and he has only the true God realm cultivation base. Haha, it's so good. At least one of us can survive this time. The 3 Sea Clan prisoners were cheered up as they found the other had only the true God realm cultivation base. They were stimulated, screaming strangely. They didn't wait until Shi Yan stopped moving, storming toward him. King God realm experts had the God domain, and those 3 weren't an exception. As they were the warriors of the Sea Clan, most of them would cultivate water power Upanishad, which made their God domain have the attributes of water. Once they urged it, water would murmur around their bodies. Moisture aura flooded the place. Water waves that naked eyes could see wound around their bodies as if they were standing in the middle of a furious current, showing all the advantages of the Sea Clan. Inside the water God domain, those Sea Clan prisoners felt like fish in the sea. Their powers and the God domain had fused perfectly, which had doubled their speed and bursting energy. A fierce flow of energy swarmed over Shi Yan like the rolling flood current. In that moment, Shi Yan was submerged in the seawater. His powers were hindered by many layers. His body's movements also struggled. It was hard to activate his powers. The God domain of a warrior would bring him tremendous support. Different God domains would affect each other. If these 3 had cultivated different powers Upanishad. Once they joined hands, if they let their god domains overlap, their powers would be reduced. However, these three were from the same sea clan, and their power Upanishad was water, which made their god domains' attributes unified. Thus, when they activated their god domains, they wouldn't affect but promote each other, expanding the coverage of the combined god domain. Sure, Yen felt like he had fallen in a muddy puddle while his powers were weakened. Seeing the three prisoners furiously storming forward to attack him, his face became serious. He had underestimated the might of the others and the mysteries of the overlapped god domain. Right when the battle had started, he fell into a disadvantaged situation. Seeing waves rolling torrentially inside the god domain, Shi Yen cleared his mind. His eyes changed as all the impure thoughts in his head were washed away. Now his mind was as tranquil as an old well that had no ripples. Touching his forehead, the soul altar suddenly spun. Marvelous flames appeared in his eyes. A scorching aura burst out from his body. Instantly, he was covered in a sea of fire. Flame shot out dazzlingly, twirling around him. This is the flaming power of the sun original essence. He had absorbed a large amount of flaming energy in the solar star exploding fragment field. As soon as his star power Upanishad flickered, the flaming solar energy stored in his chest would be stimulated at once. He also borrowed the power of the vermilion bird, true flame, and the earth flame. Shortly, he turned into a fire freak with the blazing fire burning on his entire body and spread out to the environment from him. The torrential power of water from the three prisoners' god domain turned into white steam before it could touch Shi Yan's body. The soft power of water was dissolved rapidly, turned into mist, and vanished. It couldn't gather again. The vermilion bird, true flame, and the earth flame were ones of the heaven flames. After so many years of refining, their flames had become extremely hot energy. The power they had contributed to Shi Yen had doubled his flaming solar energy. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Thick white mist diffused everywhere. Shortly, Shi Yen and the three prisoners were hidden in the mist. Their figures disappeared temporarily. Ao Guduo, Leona, and the other feudal vassals couldn't see what was happening in there. All were surprised. Ao Guduo was astounded for a while, then barked with his foul mouth. That mother asterisk curs, cultivating the fire power Upanishad. No wonder why he dares to face those three prisoners directly. He's lucky indeed. Fire is always the nemesis of water. They have a natural dispute. If Shi Yan's fire energy was abundant, he could oppress the god domain of water attribute. Ao Guduo didn't know Shi Yan. Thus, when he saw the fire burning on his body, he immediately assumed that Shi Yan had cultivated fire power Upanishad. Leona knitted her brows as she was also surprised. She had communicated with Shi Yan, so she had a clear understanding of his secrets. Leona mused discreetly. If the mark on his forehead is real, his power Upanishad shouldn't be like this. Did I see it wrong? Carthu and Rochester instinctively thought that Shi Yan's main power was fire Upanishad. They got his intentions and appraised him for making a good decision in choosing the opponents. As he had found the Sea Clan men to fight, he had made a good use of the natural nemesis features between the powers Upanishad to subdue the Sea Clan prisoners. Only Delay didn't have such thought. Among this group, he was the only one who had witnessed Shi Yan using the soul burial ground. He believed that if the man understood that wicked power Upanishad, he wouldn't consider another power Upanishad his main power to cultivate. He contemplated and reasoned. Afterward, he couldn't help but acclaim Shi Yan inwardly. The king of the divine nation in the dark firmament star, far away, also had a gleam of surprise. He stared at the magical mirror in front of him, then turned to Princess Xiao. Zhao said that he cultivates the death Upanishad, right? Zi Yao nodded to confirm, then smiled deliberately. Father, that man has many secrets. When we were in the solar star exploding fragment field, he used the star power Upanishad to connect with the sun original essence and collected its flaming solar energy. The power he's using now is from his previous accumulation. He doesn't cultivate fire Upanishad. Du Tianji grinned bizarrely. The martial path doesn't have an end. Sometimes mixing powers isn't always a good method. I hope this boy knew it already. If he's stubborn and cultivating additional powers, he would get nothing in the end. Father, don't worry. I think he knows his goals, said Ziyao smilingly. Du Tianji nodded. He didn't talk more, and they got back to the battle in the mirror. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Thick white mist diffused. The 3C clan prisoners' furious attack ended in a failure. The 3 prisoners couldn't help but curse. They knew that they weren't lucky this time since Shi Yan had cultivated the fire power Upanishad. With the nemesis feature, their attack was dissolved. They were totally enraged. God domain was still covering everywhere as they didn't intend to use all of their powers. They exchanged looks, then diverged instantly, moving toward Shi Yan in a triangle formation. In the white mist, 3 several hundred-meter rivers were driven by their powers from 10 miles away. The 3 rivers flowed like the Milky Way with billions of tons of seawater showering from the sky. They were like 3 massive whips flogging toward Shi Yan. These 3 were careful. Whenever they arrived at an area, they would check if it had lake or rivers or not. In critical times, they could borrow the force of the river and lake to resist the enemies. Thus, within 10 miles from where they appeared, there would be lakes or rivers. 300-meter heaven rivers grumblingly were condensed into 3 crystal white ribbons falling from the sky. Big ancient trees exploded all of a sudden as they couldn't bear the fierce attack of water. The dried trees and leaves also contributed to the mass of the rivers. One of the 3 prisoners was cunning enough to make his river roll the big rocks along. The rocks moving fast in the river was so intimidating. The Milky Ways dashed over from 3 different directions with terrifying energy accumulated in the furious water. The area where Shi Yan was standing had to bear a massive force, a formidable pressure, which had almost broken his body. He was still calm. There was no panic sparkling in his eyes. It looked like he was numb as his eyes showed a boundless emptiness. All of a sudden, his hands, like 2 sharp claws, thrust into the sky and ripped hard. Ripped the sky. The void seemed to be grabbed by invisible, formidable claws and torn forcefully. A dazzling slit appeared in the sky. It's the space crack. The sky is torn apart. Space shooting light emerged from the slit gloriously and dazzlingly. Furious and chaotic lights from outer space gushed out from the space slit. It was so powerful it made souls shiver. A distorted and wildly powerful suction force appeared from the slit. Just like a whale sucking water, that space slit had sucked all the water from the 3 fierce Milky Ways together with all the big trees, rocks, and dirt they carrying. Not a single drop remained. The water power Upanishad that the 3C clan warriors had combined energy to perform, the torrential Milky Way, had been dissolved like that. The 3C clan experts paled as the energy they had poured into the Milky Ways had been swallowed completely. The connection was cut off, so they couldn't retrieve any bit of the amount they had mobilized. King God realm warriors could release or retreat their energy regularly. To condense 3 Milky Ways, they had used a lot of energy. Although their rolling Milky Way couldn't achieve the desired result, they would still be able to retrieve the energy to prepare for the next attacks. However, they could never imagine that the space crack would appear precisely at this moment and wolf all of their power. Even though they had seen everything, they couldn't retrieve a bit of their energy. In such a short time, half of the energy in their bodies was consumed. Their faces turned ash-gray. The corner of the purgatory star. On the mountains surrounding the lake, 5 feudal vassals and Du Tianlu were quiet with gawking eyes. They looked at the scene projected in the mirror disbelievingly. Mwahaha! Suddenly, Leona burst out laughing with her savage appearance. Her laughter almost shook the sky. Ao Guduo gritted his teeth, his face ferocious. He couldn't control his foul mouth, cursing loudly. Chapter 775 Dead Sky. Chapter 775 Dead Sky. Inside the extreme purgatory field, the 3 first Sky of King God realm experts of the Sea clan lost their excited mood. They felt chilled, their faces paled. Shir Yan's power Upanishad was strangely evil beyond their estimation. They didn't react timely, due to their wrong assumption. They had spent half of the energy accumulated in their bodies to build 3 Milky Ways, which the space slit had swallowed all in just a blink of an eye. The energy they had used was dragged into the space slit. They had not been able to take it back. Their energy had been reduced massively. One side reduces, one side increases. Shir Yan had released his soul burial ground for quite a long time. While they weren't aware of anything, the vitality of the 3 prisoners had been drawn significantly. The Sea clan warriors had used a large amount of energy, while Shir Yan had taken in the light spots of their vitality. His spirit, soul, and chi were filled, as he was brimmed with tremendous energy. Dark firmament star, the Grand Palace. Du Tianji's eyes flared up while gluing to the big magical mirror in front of his eyes. He was apparently astounded. Then he turned to Princess Zi Yao next to him. Yawa, this boy knows how to use space power Upanishad, too. Zi Yao was a little bit embarrassed. She had just told him Shir Yan had focused on his main power cultivation, and now he suddenly performed space power Upanishad, which abashed her. Father, the powers Upanishad he's cultivating are mixed indeed. However, Du Tianji waved to stop her. He beamed a faint smile. According to you, he knows what's he doing. I do want to see if he does know what to do. Zi Yao gave a forced smile. Du Tianji rubbed his chin. Such a greedy kid. If someone else has the dead power Upanishad, he will never lay his eyes on anything else. The dead power Upanishad alone is rare in the Raging Flame Star area. Not many people have the chance to see it before. He isn't satisfied with this power. He still cultivates different powers Upanishad. I don't know what this man wants. His understanding of space power isn't shallow, explained Xiao. Du Tianji nodded. I can see that. As he's able to tear a space slit at the true God realm, it's proven his understanding of space power isn't just ordinary. However, once he reaches the King God realm, taking more than one at a time isn't good for his cultivation in the future. I'm not sure if it's a good thing. Zi Yao felt a headache. Yeah, but this man's quite special. He has many secrets. Father, take your time and watch him. Even I don't have a deep understanding of him. I can't see how many things he's concealing. Interesting, Du Tianji nodded, showing that he got interested. In the extreme purgatory field. Shir Yan retrieved the energy he had burst out above his head. The massive space slit faded away little by little. Looking at the 3 experts of the Sea clan with their pale faces, Shir Yan grinned. He strolled toward one of them. His steps were firm, and everywhere he passed by, big trees and beautiful foliage yellowed then shriveled. Insects hiding deep underground stopped singing. Delay's eyes sparkled. He was shaken inwardly, acclaiming in his head, "Here it comes." Whenever it was released, only the ones immersed in the soul burial ground, dead Upanishad, could sense it. People standing outside couldn't detect the soul burial ground on the images projected by the mirror lake. The reason why Delay could find that Shir Yan was using this power Upanishad was from the different conditions of the flowers, trees, and insects. Since he had witnessed this with his own eyes before, he knew the wicked and cruel signs of this power Upanishad. Also, they couldn't see the tiny light spots like raindrops congregating at Shi Yan. However, those onlookers could spot the difference wherever Shi Yan walked by. They were startled, but they didn't know what's happening there. Besides Delay, Leona was the only one among the others who was sensitive enough to recognize it. As soon as she saw that the foliage, flowers, and even the big trees shriveled, her dark green eyes sparkled. She stopped her wild laughter, pulling herself together to focus on the situation in the field. Aoguduo, Rochester, Carthu, and Du Tian hadn't realized anything. They just saw the 3 Sea Clan experts slowly had their eyes gloomier as if their chi, spirit, and soul were taken away. The decrease in their fighting will was easy to notice. In the opposite condition to them was Shi Yan's boiling fighting will. His eyes sparkled with exciting light. Just like a hungry beast walked out of the deep forest, he needed meat to fill his empty stomach. Dead sky. Shi Yan sauntered, his face calm and cold. When he was around 1,000 meters away from those 3 experts, he halted, stooped, and shouted. A deadly, silent, and desperate aura suddenly diffused from him. Brutal, bloodthirsty, resentment, and other negative energy gushed out from his acupuncture points. Flows of energy weaved into an ash-gray mist, congregating atop of him, creating a massive gray curtain. Inside that gray curtain was the thick aura of death, which seemed to be able to cut all kind of vitality. This is one of the supernatural martial techniques he had experimented and created with the Dead Power Upanishad he had comprehended. With the Dead Power Upanishad as the foundation, negative energy was condensed into an attack, creating a massive dead sky curtain in the air, which was grumblingly pressing down. The dead sky curtain covered the 3 experts of the Sea Clan. They were panicked, their faces gloomy. Inside that gray sky, negative feelings multiplied. In their eyes, it was a world of death. They saw no hope of life. Everywhere was cold and deadly silent, but they could hear countless ghosts crying, calling for them from inside that dead world. Being perplexed, they suddenly had a strange thought that they were part of that dead world, and it absolutely belonged to them no matter what. When this negative mood arose, it meant their fighting will and belief had been smashed. Now they couldn't create a complete thought. Naturally, they could never urge the energy in their body wholly. The confusedness in their eyes became clearer, and the 3 of them seemed to be completely foolish. They stood still at their spots, just letting the dead sky fall on them. The deadly energy inside the dead sky condensed and created the massive death seal. They grumblingly exploded in the ash-gray clouds and instantly pressed down on the 3 prisoners. At that perilous moment, they woke up instinctively. They urged the God domain one more time, trying to stimulate the leftover energy in their bodies. With the loud sound of a furious water current, a flow of tenacious water power extended, creating the white waves swarming toward the sky. Burn! Sure, Yen didn't change his face. A thought popped up in his soul. The powers of the earth flame, the vermilion bird true flame, and the flaming solar energy in his body fused into one furious and wild flame, flying out from his sleeve. The flaming dragon stormed toward the water waves the other 3 had created. The fire dragon wound marching forward. Shriveled, dried plants ignited and burned. Even the rigid rocks were melted into a strange, viscous substance. Shortly, the area of several thousand meters in front of Shi Yan had become a fire sea. Flames covered everywhere. The earth flame and the vermilion bird true flame seized the chance and flew out discreetly, releasing their flaming energy into the sea of fire. The god domain that the 3 prisoners had created with efforts was burned by the furious, rolling flame. Their energy was consumed faster. The Sea Clan was always afraid of fire. It's their nature. That's why they were petrified again. The evil energy of the dead sky had affected their soul consciousness, storming into their soul altar and affecting their god souls. 3 poor Sea Clan experts at the first sky of King God realm had made wrong assumptions, which helped Sher Yan's wicked and cruel force break their souls. The dead sky then controlled their mind, making them walk toward the dead sky and the sea of fire. Sher Yan's face was calm. He released his soul consciousness to watch each of their commotions. He didn't dare to be careless. The onlookers were dazed, gazing at the mirror lake. They all wore a bizarre face. Since they weren't inside the dead sky, they didn't know how the evil energy there had affected the souls of the prisoners. In their view, they saw only the 3 experts of the Sea Clan got stunned, then got crazy as they proactively walked toward the fire sea and let the ash-gray mist cover them. At that moment, the onlookers suddenly realized that the 3 Sea Clan experts were about to be finished under Sher Yan's strange and wicked powers. They had no hope of overturning the situation. And it was true. The 3 experts of the Sea Clan walked into the fire sea. Their god bodies couldn't resist the burning force of the earth flame and the vermilion bird, true flame. Shortly, they were melted, turning into a puddle of blood, which was then evaporated into a blood-red mist. The strangest thing was they didn't feel pain, just standing dazedly as if their souls had gone away. They weren't aware of their god bodies being melted gradually. People watching the battle from a corner of the Purgatory Star had their eyes sparkling, looking at the warriors in the mirror lake. They suddenly felt a chill sent down their spines. A cold and fearful feeling arose from their hearts. The deaths of the 3 Sea Clan experts weren't bloody or tragic, but they were so evil and bizarre, which was like watching something virtual and eerie. Who doesn't treasure his life? Who can keep silent being burned? Who will go upon his own initiative to die? The calmer the deaths of the 3 prisoners of the Sea Clan were, the more frightened the onlookers were when they looked at Sher Yan in the extreme purgatory field. They all felt their scalp numb. This kid is thorny and scary. No one knows what he has done to the enemies and made them willing to die without feeling pain or fright. What kind of power Upanishad is that? Aoguduo, Rochester, and Carthu put on the dark and gloomy face. A gleam of fear flashed in their eyes. They were discreetly putting up guard, thinking that Sher Yan wasn't an easy opponent. They didn't know which power Upanishad he was cultivating that had such evil and sinister effects. Delay was uncertain. He didn't say a word, knitting his brows tightly. Only Leona had gained back her calmness, as if she had finally verified something. She strangely relaxed, eating the crystal, clear fruits. She looked calm and deliberate, as if her question had been answered. Chapter 776. Pick the tough target to start. Chapter 776. Pick the tough target to start. 3 warriors of the Sea Clan at the King God realm were burned down, leaving only bone dust on the ground. Sure, Yen stood in the center of the rolling fire and retrieved his dead power, Upanishad, with negative energy. He squinted, absorbing the essence chi of the 3 King God realm warriors into his body. He held a look of indifference, with no traces of fatigue after a fierce battle. In fact, Sher Yan didn't consume much energy at all. With the earth flame and the vermilion bird flame's assistance, he could simply destroy the opponent's water power Upanishad. His space power Upanishad had swallowed an enormous part of their energy. He expected a smooth victory. Sure, Yen didn't have enough time to calm down in his sea of fire. Shortly he frowned and then snorted. The purgatory token on his waist sent him 8 energy flows of living beings. Apparently his battle with the 3 Sea Clan experts had alerted the prisoners around here. They silently gathered. At the other corner of the Purgatory Star, the 5 feudal vassals were still sinking in fright. At this moment, they were sensitive to any changes. They were all clearly shaken. Their eyes shifted to the mirror, holding their own gaze. Mwahaha. Aoguduo laughed fiendishly. He didn't say anything, but his face said it all. In Aoguduo's eyes, Yen had just finished a tough battle killing 3 Sea Clan experts. Therefore, he must have consumed a lot of his energy. At this moment, more and more prisoners were coming to him. One of them had reached the second sky of King Godrealm. With his experience, Ao Guduo believed that warrior wouldn't control himself and instead burst out and kill Yen to take the purgatory token, which would help him survive the extreme purgatory field and gain a new life. Carthew and Rochester had the same thought. They frowned, observing. Only Leona stayed calm and cold. She glared at Ao Guduo's group and mockingly snorted. "It's over for him." Ao Guduo spread his arms, laughing cheerily. "You should prepare to hand me your life star." The corner of Carthew's mouth twitched. He looked at Ao Guduo and then Leona. He didn't say anything, his face strange. "Hand you my life star? Ao Guduo, are you blind? Watch it." Leona smiled faintly. Apparently, she wasn't someone who would yield easily. Yao has chosen a good guard. If he can pass the challenge in the extreme purgatory field, his attainment in the future is something we can't assess. Du Tian Lu said with emotions. Battling with higher realm when he's at only the third sky of true God realm and he won easily. I don't think many juniors in our divine nation can achieve such a feat. Rochester nodded. This kid does have some tricks. No wonder why Yao gave him the quota, which should be Ao Gera's. Yeah, I think that little girl's correct again. Her vision is getting sharper indeed. Damn it. Ao Guduo looked at him indignantly, shouting. My nephew Ao Gera didn't want to compete with him. He knew he would receive a quota from me. That's why he gave the other his. Harumph. I want to see if he can survive or not. Then you should watch carefully. Rochester lifted his head, looking at him without fear. I don't know why I suddenly believe that boy will get out of the extreme purgatory field alive. Rochester, you mean my nephew would die? Ao Guduo spat out coldly with a ferocious look on his face. Nodded, Rochester grinned. True. If Yen could break through the King God realm shortly, I believe he can survive. Your nephew? Perhaps he will die. Ha ha ha. Ao Guduo grimaced. He harumphed indignantly, his eyes giving off a savage gaze as if his wild nature had been aroused. Anyway, since Carthew and Rochester were feudal vassals like him, of course they wouldn't be afraid of him. Sometimes they would mock him, which enraged him badly. He gazed at the mirror lake. If his look could cross that lake, with his cultivation base, perhaps he could use his look to pierce Yen to death. Too bad Du Tianji had hired specialists to create this lake. It hid a great mystery that he couldn't use his soul to get through it. Dark firmament star. Not bad. King Du Tianji of the divine nation nodded and rubbed his chin. Not bad at all, he continued. Yao was happy. I told you, father. This man is so mysterious. It's not easy to make him lose. You little girl, your eyes had always been sharp. I am proud of you. DJ looked at her deeply. After a while he sighed. Unfortunately, you are not a man. Otherwise, I wouldn't have such a headache. Yao's face darkened as sorrow pierced her heart. She just sighed and said nothing. Inside the furious fire, the temperature was getting higher and higher. The ancient trees around had contributed to this mighty fire. The burning fire got beautifully fiercer. In the fire sea, Yen was calm, standing upright like a spear, watching here and there. Deep inside the dark forest, 8 prisoners were hiding. One of them was at the second sky of King Godrealm. His life magnetic field was obviously stronger than the others. Yen spotted them via his purgatory token. Yen didn't dare to act rashly. There were 7 first sky of King God Realm warriors and 1 second sky of King God Realm warrior. Even if he was more arrogant, he wouldn't dare say that he could defeat this force, especially since he had just finished a battle. Absorbing the essence chi of the Sea Clan experts would take time to filter. If he engaged in another battle at this moment, it would be too unfavorable to him. Sure, Yen didn't dare show a trace of fatigue. He knew that when those hungry wolves saw that he was tired, they would swarm over wildly and slash him, grinding him to take his purgatory token. At this moment, he became calmer, pondering in the sea of fire. Abruptly, he faced the sky and laughed crazily. In the ear-piercing whistle, he took action first. Clusters of flaming energy balled next to him. Just like the burning meteors from the sky, they started to precisely bombard those hiding warriors. Rumble, rumble, rumble. With the fireballs falling, those who were hiding urged their god domain to retreat or to use their powers to resist. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The fierce whistle that could prickle people's eardrums exploded inside the field. Although nobody could detect the source of the hissing, they all felt an extremely sharp force. 3 bone thorns darted so fast that no one could actually see them move. With space power, they glided and disappeared, leaving only the terrifying whistle. The god domain of one of the hiding people was pierced instantly. A bone thorn appeared, flying towards his neck. Boom! A low, rumbling sound echoed from that man's direction. In just a blink, that man showed himself. He was an expert of the Dark Spirit clan, the one who had the highest realm among the prisoners hiding here. Second sky of King God realm. Boom, boom. 2 other bone thorns appeared from the shadows, furiously stabbing. The Dark Spirit clan's expert put on a grim face while both of his hands were making hand seals and different techniques in the air. Light sparkled gloriously. Just like the blooming firework, the bone thorns and his hand seals brought more light which flashed dazzlingly, hurting people's eyes. His hand seals and techniques turned into special symbols of the Dark Spirit clan. Just like living creatures, they stopped the furious bone thorns. However, he had to retreat. Massive fireballs flew toward 7 other warriors. They quietly retreated, not daring to stay and sneak into this battle. The second sky of King God Realm Dark Spirit Clan expert had to make the hand seals continuously while the 3 bone thorns were chasing after him like the spooky ghosts. No matter how hard he wiggled, he couldn't get rid of them. After one futile attempt, they would disappear. Immediately, they would reappear from a cunning angle, which made the others struggle hard to dodge and resist. Shortly, that man glared at Shi Yen from a far distance, snorted, then ran away. When the other 7 saw the second sky of King God realm running away, they didn't stop to think and immediately ran for their lives. In just a blink, no one was hiding near Shi Yen. At this moment, sweat started to bead on his forehead. His tense nerves relaxed. He hastened to use pellets to adjust his conditions. The man at the second sky of King God realm was truly strong. Shi Yen had used the bone thorns with space power, but he couldn't pierce through his god domain shortly to attack his god body. Shi Yen had tried his best to apply the knowledge of space power to his attack. He had even added star energy into the bone thorns. However, it was only enough to make his opponents afraid of him, not sufficient to deal any damage. The reason why the expert retreated was because he couldn't estimate Shi Yan's real competence. He was afraid that once he fought with him, both would receive damage, which was the best chance for the other 7 prisoners to attack them. In the end, he couldn't get the purgatory token, and he could have been wounded badly or even gotten killed. Shi Yen understood that if there weren't so many people hiding and waiting for a chance around them, that Dark Spirit Clan's expert probably would not have given up his scheme. He would do everything he can to kill Shi Yen. The main reason why the other had left, besides Shi Yan's Beyond Realm performance, was that he was afraid of stealthy operations of the others. Thus he had to leave for now. Choosing the strongest to attack had given the best intimidation effect. It happened all according to Shi Yan's plan. Although he had to use a lot of his energy, no one dared to stay near him now. He had assumed correctly. He found the way to deal with them. If he had chosen a first sky of King God Realm Warrior to attack, the the result wouldn't have been as desired. He wouldn't have created the scaring effect. Instead, he would have created the chance for that second sky of King God Realm Warrior to kill him with one strike. In the end, he would have died pitifully here. Watch out. Cover 10 miles around. Tell me immediately when any creature approaches. His soul consciousness sensed a while in the purgatory token. He ordered the heaven flames resolutely. When all the heaven flames flew out of the fire sea, he left the place immediately, crazily flying toward the more perilous and isolated area. Shortly, his image disappeared in the view of Leona and the other. His figure wasn't projected in the mirror lake anymore. Very clever. He has many fighting experiences, too. Being calm at a critical moment like that, he's truly a character. The master of the divine nation suddenly laughed in the dark firmament star far from them. He nodded. Indeed, he's not bad. Not worse than Ao Gera. I'm anticipating that he and Ao Gera could have a battle. I think it would be more interesting. Zi Yao's face was gloomy. A gleam of begrudging sorrow sparkled in her eyes. Ao Gera and Shi Yan were her subordinates. No matter who won or lost, she would suffer from grief. Chapter 777, Getting Stronger. Chapter 777, Getting Stronger. Shi Yan didn't know that both Leona and Ao Guduo had placed a big bet on him, or the fact that the master of the divine nation in the dark firmament star was watching him. In the extreme purgatory field, after killing 3 first sky of King God Realm Sea Clan warriors, he immediately ran 1,000 miles away and found a cave in a quiet mountain to absorb the essence chi of the 3 King God Realm warriors. Since he had reached the peak of true God Realm, his acupuncture points had expanded and were able to store more energy. In addition, he found himself unable to fall into bedevilment easily. The negative moods couldn't drag him into insanity anymore, and he could focus with greater clarity. This change had arisen earlier. When he was in the Sea of Meteorites, he had always concentrated on exploiting ores which cleared his mind and purified his god soul. He found that when he focused on achieving a certain task and keeping his mind clear, he wouldn't fall into bedevilment easily. When he killed the expert of the Dark Clan, the soul-gathering pearl, the mark on his forehead and the inner world 5 devils had fused together, creating a section in the soul altar. When that section in his soul altar was built, his soul and mind became tougher and more relaxed. He thought that the reason why he wouldn't fall into bedevilment easily was related to the establishment of his soul altar. Shi Yan sat cross-legged in the dim cave, staying in the slits between the big rocks in the case. He closed his eyes to more clearly feel the changes in his body. The mysterious, refined energy didn't move this time to his essence, Chi Ancient Tree, since it was brimmed now. Unless he could break through to the King God Realm, which would expand his essence Chi Ancient Tree several times, he wouldn't receive any benefit from this mysterious energy anymore. The mysterious energy diverged into 2 pathways into his body. One flooded his muscles, blood, and bones, increasing their strength and refining them one more time. The energy going through the other path was converted into his immortal demon blood. Half of the essence chi of the 3 first sky of King God Realm warriors were turned into immortal demon blood. There were about 20-some drops of immortal demon blood. He stored them in a place in his body. He could use these to fight back his enemies in an emergency. Shi Yan had tried the bursting power of the immortal demon blood in Carthu's gravitational room. Shi Yan decided that he must collect the immortal demon blood by hunting experts in the extreme purgatory field as he expected to carry out his plan to change his blood. At the moment, he had more than 70 drops of immortal demon blood stored in his body. Although it was still far from the quantity he needed, he felt hopeful. Every time he adjusted his breath and conditions to refine his body, he calmed down and sensed his 3 powers Upanishad: space, star, and death and life. Every time he engaged in battle, he would use these 3 powers to utilize supernatural martial techniques, depending on the circumstance. Gradually, his understanding of the three powers Upanishad deepened. It was quite different from the warriors. When Yen broke through the true God realm, he had the three powers Upanishad create a tier of his soul altar. Perhaps this was why he was unable to decide which would be his main power and which would be his supportive power. In his point of view, all three powers Upanishad were all profound. None of them were weak. To him, they all provided tremendous support. The fight with three warriors of the Sea clan made him realize the extent of assistance that all the three powers had given him. If he hadn't had space power, he would have never dissolved their formidable attacks and defeat them. Without the dead Upanishad, their souls wouldn't have been affected, which led them to an unknowing death. His resolute victory also related to other powers Upanishad that he had been cultivating. Using the correct of the three powers Upanishad precisely during a battle was the key to winning battles. To him, the three powers Upanishad were all his main powers. He didn't want to give up any of them. He strongly believed that his three powers Upanishad could thrive together. In the future, they could boost his fighting competence to its maximum potential. While quietly looking further ahead and retrieving the soul consciousness, Yen felt changes in his body. He sent his soul into the soul altar and slowly understood. After a while, he grinned. Touching the purgatory token, he flew out of the cave. A flow of soul consciousness was poured into the purgatory token. Signs of energy of living beings within 10 miles around would be shown in the token, which Yen could check easily. Yen crossed through the vast forest aimlessly. He wanted to seek for a possible battle. A flow of feeble energy sent out from the purgatory token. Yen concentrated and sensed it. He grinned fiendishly and accelerated towards a lake. After 1 hour, the battle ended. A first sky of King God realm prisoner floated in the lake. His life was cut off. He squinted, standing quietly by the lake. After a while, he departed. He became a hunter. Prisoners in the adjacent areas became his prey. Of course, the roles were all relative. Some prisoners would initially consider Yen delicious prey. He was still at the true God realm. Prisoners who detected him all thought that he was a soft persimmon that they could squeeze easily. From his death, they would earn the purgatory token. Most of the time, whenever he showed up, his target would laugh crazily, leaving him no time to talk. They would attack him first. Upon entering the extreme purgatory field, he found only villains. And the participants' realms were also high. The third sky of true God realm was the entry level. There was no target better than such a contestant at the true God realm. Thus, whenever a prisoner found him, they immediately became excited. However, those prisoners would quickly find that Yen was actually the chewiest bone among the contestants in this extreme purgatory field. Through the purgatory token, Yen found his prey unceasingly. Once locating the one to attack, he would immediately entangle his prey and kill him. Afterward, he would take the dead man's essence chi to restore his energy, refine his bones and body, and condense the immortal demon blood. Time flies quickly. 3 months had passed just like a blink of an eye. Yen didn't remember how many battles he had engaged and how many people he had killed. His fighting will remained full, and his energy had always been at the peak of his realm. Through battling during this period, the number of immortal demon blood in his body had reached a frightening figure of 300. This was a record he had never reached before. 300 drops of immortal demon blood could replace his blood in both of his arms. He had tried it. Once he replaced the blood in his arms with immortal demon blood, his arms felt like they had endless energy. He felt like he could tear the god body of a king god realm like he could rip off a sheet of paper. The immortal demon blood hid some kind of evil, torrential energy that could fuse perfectly with his power. However, Yen had never tried this kind of energy during his battles. However, he believed that when he was backed into a corner, He would stimulate all the energy of the immortal demon blood to overturn whatever situation. He could become the winner from what would seem like a clear loss. After 3 months of fighting, he had used his opponents to perceive the essence of his 3 powers Upanishad. The extreme purgatory field was an incomparably magical place. In this area, his perception and sensibility toward the powers became very sensitive. In each fight, he had used the 3 powers Upanishad to kill his enemies. Afterward, he would obtain a new level of comprehension of the 3 powers Upanishad. After each battle, when he was refining the immortal demon blood, he would summarize his mistakes he made during the battle and learn new skills in using the power. Gradually, his understanding and perception of the 3 powers Upanishad became profound. Today, he had hunted down 5 first sky of King God realm warriors, seeing the pieces of bodies he had shattered lying in the blood puddles around the place. His face was cold, eyes shining like diamonds. His body slightly shivered as he tried to calm his mind to learn the essence of using his power Upanishad in the previous fight. His soul reached back to the past to learn something from his fight. A blinding light flashed gloriously in his soul altar. He was baffled. His eyes sparkled with a strange light. Starlight twirled around his body. Death and life, the 2 different attributes, scattered uncontrollably around him. Fine space, slits sizzled and appeared spontaneously in the void near him. Space seemed to be in an uncontrollable chaos. He was standing indifferently while his soul consciousness floated and entered some mysterious domain. After a while, he made a passionate expression as if he saw something wonderful. He quickly stormed out of his place, flashing like a beam of light to find a place for his ascetical training. He now had a good grasp of those mysteries. He just needed a way to continue studying. As long as he could harvest something, the threshold of the new realm, which had troubled him for a long time, would be wide open. Once he reached the King God realm, he believed that the realm of his prey in the extreme purgatory field would be upgraded from the first sky of King God realm to the second and third sky of King God realm. When that happened, his immortal demon blood could be condensed faster. Shortly he disappeared. In a corner of Purgatory Star, the 5 feudal vassals were sitting on their mountains together with Du Tianlu and watching the scenes in the lake. The mirror lake had been divided into some smaller sections in which one of the villains was showing off his talents. The lake would clearly project the battles. That's why Leona, Aoguduo, and the others could watch most of the battles happening in the extreme purgatory field. In every battle, the 3 young people of Leona's team and 3 members of Aogera's team were like sharp weapons that could pierce through anything. Wherever they passed, most of the prisoners would be torn into pieces. Only the 3rd sky of King God realm warriors would proactively stay away from these pointy weapons to save their lives. Besides those 2 forces, Yalin and Taimu under Karthu's command, and the other 2 warriors under Rochester's didn't meet many troubles. However, they had fewer achievements compared to Leona and Aogera's team. They could kill only a small number of prisoners. Sure, Yen was alone, so he could be considered a force himself. His achievement was relatively normal. Chapter 778, True Colors. Chapter 778, True Colors. In 3 months, Shi Yan had killed many people. His achievement wasn't a small number, but it was still much smaller compared to the other 5 forces. The warriors he had killed were all at the first sky of King God realm. He hadn't killed any second sky of King God realm warriors. Moreover, after each battle, he would disappear for several days, a different habit compared to the other 5 forces. The other forces would continue their slaughter as if they had never been exhausted. The achievement contestants could complete in the extreme purgatory field did not only depend on the number they killed, but also the realms of the ones they killed. According to Du Tianji's rule, killing a second sky of King God realm expert was equal to killing 10 first sky of King God realm warriors. Leona's team and Aogera's team had killed several second sky of King God realm experts. Their number wasn't something Shi Yin could compete with at the moment. Since his real realm was still the true God realm, he was limited. For the time being, he didn't dare battle the warriors at the second sky of King God realm. Only after he had entered the King God realm could he skip the level and battle with the others. When that time came, he would be confident that he wouldn't get himself killed. In his current condition, maybe he could kill a second sky of King God realm warrior, but it wouldn't be easy. He would get hurt and possibly suffer from severe wounds. The extreme purgatory field hid dangers at every place and at all times. There wasn't a single peaceful moment in this place. When the warriors battled against each other, they would generate tremendous energy fluctuation that would attract the other prisoners. When someone sees you tired or wounded, he will not talk about rules. He will kill you instantly. Since Shi Yin had a precise assumption to the situation, he hadn't dared to provoke the second sky of King God realm warriors. It wasn't that he was afraid of defeat. He was afraid of bad wounds, which would make him the prey of prisoners hiding elsewhere. Shi Yin had his own rules. Perhaps it was because of his cautiousness that he was able to survive until this moment, continue getting stronger and accumulate energy and wait for a chance to break through. Today, after 3 months of collecting immortal demon blood and being patient, his chance has finally arrived. A corner of the Purgatory Star. Leona, Aoguduo, and the others were still watching their teams fight in different areas. Their faces were cold and indifferent. However, they didn't quarrel or mock each other anymore. The result of this competition became gradually clear. If nothing unexpected happens, Leona's team and Aogera's team will become the forces that have killed the most and claim victory. Yalin, Taimu, Rochester's team, and Demeng's team hadn't faced any difficult situations yet. However, from the current scores, it would be difficult for them to win. In their eyes, after 3 months, the winners would be Leona's and Aogera's teams. And what made people wait was the big bet between Leona and Aoguduo. They were waiting in silence for the encounter between Shi Yin and Aogera in the extreme purgatory field. However, the extreme purgatory field was really vast, approximately half of the Purgatory Star. The chance for them to meet each other on the field was very slim, unless they proactively searched for each other. This was how Aogera searched for Shi Yin. Before he killed someone, he would ask about Shi Yin's whereabouts. He wanted to locate Shi Yin quickly to start his bloody slaughter. He remembered Aoguduo's words. His resentment towards Shi Yin had enraged him daily. However, the prisoners who had met Shi Yin were all killed. Aogera couldn't find any news of Shi Yin's location. He was quite irritated. Today, Aogera's chance came as he met the Dark Spirit Clan's second sky of King God Realm Warrior who had encountered Shi Yin. As they were at the same realm, being the god's favored one, Aogera was stronger than him. Moreover, Aogera wasn't alone. That man's fate was determined. He was defeated and wounded badly. His body and soul were detained. At this moment, Aogera didn't hasten to finish him. He asked with a cold stare, "Do you know anything about a true God Realm contestant?" "He's one of us, one of the 2 weakest, but he doesn't know how to summon the beasts. Tell me what you know, and I will let you die intact." The Dark Spirit Clan warrior had both his soul and energy restrained. He had heard about Aogera and his brutal methods before. Thus, he hesitated a bit, then spat out, "I know his general location." Aogera's eyes brightened. He was surprised. "You just need to tell me the estimated location. I can let you die without pain. I'll keep your god body intact. I met him 3 months ago. Then I hid for a while. I know where he is." The man pondered for a few seconds. He knew that he couldn't avoid Aogera's slaughter. If the other dragged his soul out and searched his soul using special techniques, his secret would be revealed. Thus, he shared what he knew about Shi Yin's whereabouts honestly. Boom! The man's body was ripped off by countless beams of gold light. Blood splashed like a rain shower. The thick smell of blood permeated the area. Aogera didn't let the man die intact. He stooped and smiled evilly as if he had released out his anger. Gold lightning strikes shot out from his god domain, grinding that man's flesh body. Finally, I found you! Aogera stooped, his eyes sinister with an evil intent. He suddenly said, change the direction. It is time to take that brat life. The other two warriors under Aoguduo understood his personality, so they were not surprised by his emotions. They nodded, telling him that they understood. This team of 3 followed in the direction the man had told them, moving fast. Dark firmament star. This man is brutal. He has no humanity. He doesn't talk rules. He even lied to the man who died. Well then, I like him. The master of the divine nation, Du Tianji, laughed slightly while watching Aogera's operation. A confused look sparkled in Zi Yao's beautiful eyes. Her bold brows knitted together, her face unnatural. Until now, Aogera was always nice and gentle in front of her, giving her a feeling similar to a mild spring breeze. She had never seen this other face of Aogera. In this place today, she had finally witnessed Aogera's brutal deeds. She understood that the Aogera in front of her was one person. Behind her back, he was a completely different person. The lake in her heart rippled as a small rock was thrown into it. She pondered. That man had never hid his true self. From the beginning until now, he always acted cold and harsh. Compared to Aogera, he seemed to be easier to approach. She contemplated quietly. She was a little absent-minded. Aogera's deed had chilled her heart. The master of the divine nation showed a faint smile as he was not bothered by Aogera. He laughed louder. Zaor, don't you feel lost? In our divine nation, Aogera is infamous indeed. After he's become your retinue, he's tried to control himself. You have never seen him in this manner, I guess? Zi Yao nodded bitterly. When he was with me, he was always nice and gentle. He treated people well and friendly. I let him handle my glorious amethyst star. My people liked and respected him. They said that he was like a tender sunshine. Du Tianji was surprised. My silly little girl. It is because he is chasing you. That's why he had to show you his best face. Didn't you know his reputation before you met him? Did you just ignore it? Zi Yao pondered for a while. Then she said begrudgingly, perhaps when he was with me, he was too nice and gentle. It made me not believe in the rumors. Then a new thought startled her. That asshole didn't change his manner in front of me. He never wanted to show off his perfect features. He often told me cold words that made me hate him. Is it true that he doesn't think about me? That's why he doesn't mind what I think about him. After thinking for a while, she felt lost somehow. She felt a little bit angry. It's normal. When your father chased your mother, I was always gentle and tender. I didn't show her my evil face. I tried to protect her because I cared. Although Aogera is infamous, he is honest to you. He has to eat the bitter fruits. I'm sure about this. Du Tianji smiled. And about that boy, I think he doesn't have any bad will towards you. That's why he shows his true colors to you. It is good, anyway. If you wanted to use him and he always hid his honest thoughts, it would not be good for you. I don't like people pretending in front of me. Too fake. I'm willing to let Aogera show his true colors to me. I don't want him to wear a mask when he's with me. Zi Yao suddenly lifted up her head, looking behind the master of the divine nation. I think staying with someone like Shi Yan is much easier. Du Tianji stayed silent as if he was recalling something, his eyes showing mixed emotions. After a while he muttered, perhaps I was wrong that year. Your mother got angry with me when she found out that I was so brutal. Perhaps I shouldn't disguise myself. She wouldn't have questions in her mind. Zi Yao's beautiful eyes flashed. Father, how did my mother die? Du Tianji grimaced. He snorted and didn't talk more. Since Zi Yao was anxious, she asked nothing else. However, her curiosity wouldn't die that easily. Long afterwards, Du Tianji opened his mouth again. Zhao, if you could choose between Ao Gera and Shuryen, who would you choose? Ao Guduo stands behind Ao Gera. Although that boy's cultivating the dead Upanishad, he seems to have nothing related to that person. From what I've observed, his potential is not as strong as Ao Gera. He can't assist you well. If you could choose one of them to be the survivor, who would you want? Zi Yao was surprised and she panicked. After a long time, she stooped and whined, I don't know. In fact, you don't need to choose. Only one of them will survive. They will help you choose themselves. Du Tianji smiled faintly and his face relaxed. Zi Yao didn't know what her father was thinking. Chapter 779. A Frightening Change. Chapter 779. A Frightening Change. Some lake in Purgatory Star. Du Tian Lu stooped to watch the lake, holding the blood crown in his hand. All of a sudden, he made a stern expression and felt surprised. He couldn't help but cry, Ah! Leona could feel something too. Her line of sight fell on an area in the lake. An uncontrollable joy crossed her dark, green eyes. What's happening? Earth and heaven energy in that area is changing. From this situation, perhaps someone is breaking into the new realm? Du Tianlu was startled. Then he recalled something. Shuryen is in that area. Everybody was shaken. Rochester, Carthu, and Alay were surprised. Strange light shot out from their eyes as they shifted their looks to that area. Ao Guduo grimaced and couldn't hide his snort. He seemed to be very irritated. In the mirror lake, massive energy was gathering inside a cave of a hill. That kind of energy looked like immense, gray clouds. The energy seemed to be tied by an invisible entity that kept pulling them, gathering them together. Strange beams of light shot out from that cluster as if they were refining energy. At the beginning, the mass of that gray energy was as big as a room. Gradually, the energy in its core had pulled and gathered more earth and heaven energy. Shortly, the mass of energy clustered at that area had covered 10 mu of land. Peculiar energy fluctuations appeared in that area. From time to time, they could see light shoot out from a small slit in the space. From their perspective, they could only see energy continually gathering. They could see neither what was happening inside the cave nor what Shuryen was doing. However, they knew that only one contestant knew how to use space power and make space crack. That person was Shuryen. So, although they couldn't see his figure, they were sure he was the one who was creating such a tremendous commotion. Earth and heaven energy condensed and refined unceasingly, creating the miraculous power that could change the body. This was the most evident sign that happened when a true God realm warrior was breaking through to the king god realm. Apparently, at this moment, Shuryen was immersing in his breakthrough. It's been just 3 months, a short period, and he can make it to this step. Not bad. In fact, is good. Carthu was sinking in thought. He was astounded for a while before talking, instinctively looking at Leona. Leona wasn't shaken. She was calm, and hope could be seen through her eyes. If this boy can get out alive, his future potential is immeasurable. Delay suddenly spoke up after many days of keeping silent. His eyes raked through people, then said seriously, I met him 3 years ago. At that time, he had only the second sky of True God Realm cultivation base. He would never mistake it. The battle that took place 3 years ago had left a deep impression on his mind that he would never forget. He would never forget that Shuryen, at his second sky of True God Realm, had subdued his son Demeng 3 years ago. Through that battle, he could see a shadow behind Shuryen, the shadow that had disappeared for so many years, but he still respected it out of fear. That's also why he didn't dare kill Shuryen Yen, even though he felt so ashamed. He didn't dare attack him himself, but he had planned some stealthy plans. He was afraid of the shadow behind Shi Yen. He was afraid that if he made a wrong assumption, disaster would fall on him and his family. That man was an undying legend of the raging Flame Star area. Whoever had known about his legend would never dare face him. Delay's cold explanation had attracted many people. Ao Guduo couldn't stay calm. He shot up from his seat, trying to hide the fright on his face. Delay, are you sure? That kid had only the second sky of True God Realm cultivation base 3 years ago? Rochester expressed his admiration. Zi Yao's good fortune is here. Finally, I know why she wanted to give Ao Gara's quota to Shi Yen. I got it now. That little girl isn't bad. Carthu was shaken. His eyes brightened as he took a deep breath. 3 years. He needed just 3 years to enter the third sky of True God Realm from the second sky of True God Realm. If he had accumulated for many years, it wouldn't have been a big surprise. However, his third sky of True God Realm has just been established after 3 years. And now, he was able to walk through the door leading to the King God Realm. 3 years. He has used only 3 years. He's a monster. Such a monster. Carthu's eyes brightened. In their eyes, when Shi Yen was still at the second sky of True God Realm, he could have a lot of time accumulating energy and perceiving his realm. Breaking through the third sky of True God Realm in 3 years wasn't something too special to achieve. They thought that Shi Yen must have had a long time cultivating before that. But this was different. The time he took to enter the King God Realm from the third sky of True God Realm had taken him less than 3 years. How can someone comprehend that? The 5 great feudal vassals and Du Tian Lu were startled. They all fell into silence. I think after a warrior reached the third sky of True God Realm, even if he uses magical pellets and medicine every day, he can't fill the essence Qi Ancient Tree within 3 years, let alone spend countless days comprehending his powers Upanishad. 3 years is just a flash in our life, a small ripple in the long river of life. It isn't worth mentioning. But Rochester shook his head, forcing a smile. I had spent almost 100 years to find a chance to leap up from the third sky of True God Realm. This is considered fast already. Many have spent several hundred years to reach the King God Realm. Everybody stayed silent. Even foul-mouthed Ao Guduo had zipped his mouth with a gloomy and uncertain face. No one knew what he was thinking. If he can maintain this cultivating speed... Leona's gloomy voice arose before pausing from looking at the grimaced Ao Guduo. His boasting words can become true. Within 100 years, he can take the head on your neck, Ao Guduo. These are no longer the words of a madman. Everybody else recalled this event. They shifted their strange looks toward Ao Guduo. Under their scrutinizing looks, Ao Guduo darkened his face and said nothing. He grimaced more, his sturdy body trembling. Apparently, the other had poked his wound. I think she had just bragged. I never thought that I had underestimated him. Carthu suddenly laughed. He picked up the strong liquor from the maid standing next to him, gulped, then laughed louder. I've drunk and chatted with him. Perhaps I can brag about this later. Haha, interesting. Maybe I can witness a miracle. A new star is rising in the sky of the divine nation with its glorious light. Seems I will have to flatter him when he gets out of there. Haha. Rochester added with an odd look. Ao Guduo looked like he was about to shoot fire from his eyes. He was shivering indignantly. His face had darkened to the acme. Don't get too excited. Breaking in the extreme purgatory field isn't always a good thing. Did you forget where he is? Du Tianlu suddenly spoke up, frowning deeply. How many could have a decent end breaking to a new realm in this extreme purgatory field? Hearing him, the shaken Ao Guduo laughed sinisterly. Oh yeah, no matter how endless his potential is, Risking his life to break through the new realm in the extreme purgatory field is no different from finding a way to death. Haha. Leona remembered the special features of the extreme purgatory field. She couldn't hide her pale face as she felt a little anxious. What happened was not different from what they anticipated. After Du Tianlu finished, new changes happened in Shurian's area. Within 100 miles around, many prisoners were hiding. From the peculiar change of earth and heaven energy, they knew what was happening. Someone was about to break through in the extreme purgatory field. This realization stirred up the prisoners. They didn't hesitate. All started to move toward Shurian's location. Any warrior breaking through to the new realm shouldn't be disturbed, especially when they were about to break through a big realm. This breakthrough needed to be carried out discreetly. They even needed strong warriors to guard them. Once they got attacked, it wasn't uncommon if they got killed. It was different from the time Yen broke through to the true God realm. To reach the King God realm, he needed to gather earth and heaven energy, which couldn't be done quickly. At this moment, he couldn't be distracted, so he couldn't urge his power to resist the enemies. He needed to focus wholeheartedly to break through. If he got a lot of enemies waiting for this moment, he would be surrounded and have no means to withstand. Every one of the prisoners knew that it was convenient for them to attack him at this moment. Thus, all of them started to flood this place. Soon, savage villains appeared one by one in front of Shurian's cave. There were around 10, with several second sky of King God realm warriors. Haha, everyone has their own fate. He doesn't know the dangerous features of the extreme purgatory field, and he dares take such risks. Haha. Ao Guduo calmed down as the big rock hanging in his heart seemed to disappear. He could smile now. Rochester, Carthu, and Du Tianlu were solemn. They all frowned and sighed inwardly. They thought that Yen was acting rashly. He wasn't careful as he had made so many ferocious villains surround him. Even Leona was restlessly agitated. She scolded him in her mind, thinking that Yen was too arrogant. He understood the perilous characteristics of the extreme purgatory field, but he dared to break through in this evil place. Her worries weren't only because of a life star, but something else. Yan's life was related to one of her secrets, and even her future. She shouldn't be tense, but she didn't want to stand and stare at the prisoners taking Yan's life while he was in the middle of his breakthrough. Tenmu is about 66,700 square meters. Chapter 780, The King's Heart. Chapter 780, The King's Heart. The Grand Palace of the Dark Firmament Divine Nation. Du Tianji rubbed his chin, smiling in a relaxed manner. That kid doesn't value his life. Zi Yao's bold brows knitted tightly. She clenched her teeth and mumbled, I don't know what he's thinking. He knows how dangerous the extreme purgatory field is, but he still decided to act rashly. Ao Guduo, Rochester, and Leona had the same concerns. More than 10 hungry wolf prisoners gathered outside the cave where Yen was cultivating. They all gazed at the cave. There were no good guys in this pack. They were all the felons of the divine nation. Their thirst for blood was their basic instinct. To confine them, the 5 great feudal vassals had put a lot of effort. Many of them were infamous in the Raging Flame Star area for their bloody hands. Many warriors would shake like a leaf seeing them outside. Today, they were gathering here for a sole purpose, the Purgatory Token. Purgatory Star, the biggest prison of the Empire, only imprisoned the death-sentenced inmates. Once they were kept in the Purgatory Star, no one even dreamed about breaking out. Hotshots guarded this place year-round, and the prison also had intimidating restrictions and barriers. If they took risks and broke out, death would be their only consequence. The reason why they were kept alive was because the Empire needed them. It needed them to die in a valuable way. The extreme purgatory field was their stage, their blood and fire fate. With their forsaken destiny, they had only one way to live, which was through the purgatory token. Taking the purgatory token was the only way for them to get out of the purgatory star. No matter how serious their crimes were, the Empire would clear them all. A purgatory token meant life, a dawn of hope. At this moment, that dawn was in front of them. It was also easy to reach. What prisoner wouldn't be excited? Seems like we can't wait for he and Aogera to engage in battle. Warriors have to concentrate wholeheartedly while breaking through. He won't be an exception. Du Tianji smiled faintly. What a pity his potential wasn't bad. He was just too rash. Zi Yao gritted her teeth. She was worried and felt chills. She didn't know why she didn't want to see Shi Yan experiencing bad situations. This thought was much stronger than her worry for Aogera's life. Upon seeing the villains gathering more and more, looking like they were about to take action, some images flashed in her mind. Demeng fought with Shi Yan, which frightened Alei, to save her imperial dignity. She and Shi Yan ran away in the amethyst war chariot through the solar star, exploding fragment field. She remembered the moment he controlled the flaming meteorites bombarding the others, wildly in the strange, forbidden place. The time they spent together in the barren and isolated land. Each of his jokes, his actions. Those images played in her head, and she couldn't wash them away. A wisp of bitterness rippled in the lake of her heart, expanding to her whole body. While she didn't realize that, her beautiful eyes sparkled, expressing worry and tension which had never happened before. It's been so many years, and she had never met a man who could make her yearn for him, worried about him like that. She was worried that he would be killed. Aogera had stood behind her for so many years, but she had never felt the same way towards him. Suddenly, Xiao knew that the man who came from an unknown continent had rooted deep in her heart, occupying an important position she could never dismiss. "You're confused," Du Tianji frowned, talking coldly and heartlessly. People who plan for big schemes won't notice the minor details. They won't let anything distract their minds. No matter who he is just a sword in your hand, the support you need to move forward. You have to remember that the sword in your hand is just a tool, and you should never let the sword stab yourself. Zi Yao was shaken. She woke up from her thought, shaking her head miserably. She said nothing. Without a callous heart, how could you survive the cruel and harsh competition? If you're not cold and calm enough, you will harm not only yourself but also your people. Du Tianji snorted. Girl, you can't compete with your brother Du Jia in these manners. You're soft-hearted. How will you succeed? To get the throne, Du Jia attacked me and my brother. Is this the necessary quality to be a king? Zi Yao's beautiful eyes shone with anger. Father, were you just like my brother that year? I was more heartless than him. Du Tianji parted his lips with a cold and sinister face. You and Du Jia aren't blood siblings. You have different mothers. It is normal for him to attack you guys. That year, no need to mention my siblings born from other mothers. I even killed my own brothers. My own brothers, who stood in my way, I killed them. Zi Yao's face lost color in fright. If I could get back to that time, I would still do the same. For the apex of the martial path, for the prosperity of the divine nation, there is no man that I wouldn't kill. Du Tianji snorted, his face heartless and resolute. Dash. Extreme purgatory field. Inside the cave, strange energy was rippling. Earth and heaven energy gathered thickly on an area more than 10 mu. Sparks were sent into the sky with lots of energy. Flows of earth and heaven energy became purer, oozing out from the energy area. They streamed out and then were pulled into the cave by some unknown force. In the adjacent areas by the river, in the forest, or even underground, The prisoners couldn't wait any longer. They showed up one by one, gazing at the cave like a pack of hungry wolves. Furlough, you've been watching for a while. Why haven't you attacked yet? A ghost-marked clan warrior at the second sky of King God Realm turned and looked at the other. These people were imprisoned for a long time, so they knew each other well. The man named Furlough was a Sea Clan warrior who had lost one arm. He also had the second sky of King God Realm cultivation base. He snorted, "Larky, if you want the purgatory token, you should go now." "Haha, don't worry. I won't compete against you. Go now." He and Larky were the two second sky of King God Realm warriors in this group. They understood each other, and they knew that they were all tough and cruel. They were secretly afraid of each other. "Haha, I'm not in a hurry. I've been imprisoned for too long. I'm not going to act impatiently now." Larky cracked a smile, showing his yellow teeth. "But you! I remember you saying that you have a son. His life is tough out there. Since you've been jailed, he has suffered a lot. I can't say if he would still be alive now." Hearing him, Furlough's face drained of color and snorted again. The truth was that he couldn't wait. His son suffered and was bullied frequently out there. He calculated that his son was about to break through to the Sky Realm. Furlough knew that the Sky Realm breakthrough required a lot of materials and lucky encounters. It would be better if he could have the divine pellets for support and received a good Power Upanishad from the source of Power Upanishad inheritance. His Sky Realm was an important turning point. He must leave this place. He must help his son break through. Thus he felt panicked. "Limu." Furlough pondered for a while before calling a first sky of King God Realm warrior standing near him with a savage look on his face. "You get in there and check it out. If you help me take the purgatory token, I promise you that I will take care of your daughter well after I get out." The warrior, whose name was called, hesitated with a cold look. "If you won't go, then don't blame me." Furlough rolled his eyes and showed his ferocious face. "You should take the chance that I'm giving you while you still can." Limu reared back from Furlough's furious gaze. He felt like a snake was slithering around his neck. He was scared. He hesitated for a while. Keeping his daughter in mind, he gritted his teeth. "Boss, promise me. If I die and you get out, please take care of my daughter." "I will," Furlough nodded, "if I get out alive." Limu didn't say more. He bit his lips and stormed out of the crowd, dashing straight to Sher Yan's cave. The crowd of prisoners and villains were restless. They gathered uncontrollably, getting inevitably closer to Sher Yan's cave. At the same time, Leona and the others brightened their eyes, focusing their view on the lake to see if Sher Yan would resist this attack. When he was breaking through his new realm, anyone could simply land attacks on him if he hadn't prepared. Li Mu dashed like lightning. While he was in the air, he had urged his god domain. His god body strengthened like a tree trunk. Bark grew on his skin, and his body looked like a giant root of a 10,000-year-old tree. When he released his god domain, the plants around him also shook. Big branches were twisted and broken. His god domain drew the broken branches, turning them into sharp wooden swords, darting toward the cave. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The wooden swords brought their sharp power and exploded one by one at the entrance. Li Mu took this to chance to disappear into the cave. The people observing waited for something to happen. There was no commotion, no aura, or even a single sound. Li Mu was like a droplet that caused no ripple when fallen into the sea. The crowd of prisoners and villains were tense. They looked at the cave, confusedly. An unknown chill rose in their hearts. Leona's eyes brightened again. In a relaxed manner, she picked up another piece of fruit, taking a bite while still looking at the lake. If there was nothing reported by Li Mu, it meant Sher Yan had prepared something in the cave which proved that Sher Yan knew what he was doing. Knowing this, Leona relaxed a little. She knew that it wouldn't be easy to kill Sher Yan. "Salut, you try." Larky grinned, fiendishly. If you die, I will take care of your family. Now move." He was another warrior at the first sky of King God realm. Under such a threat, he had to jump into the cave. The same thing happened. There was no sound or commotion of a furious battle. Those who entered the cave seemed to disappear into thin air. Everybody could feel the shivers down their spines. Chapter 781. Create a Miracle. Chapter 781. Create a Miracle. Under Larky and Furlough's command, the two first sky of King God realm warriors disappeared like a stone that left no ripple after sinking into the ocean. Then the prisoners, villains, and lunatics showed up. They calmed down and grimaced. From the results of the two first sky of King God realm warriors, Larky and Furlough's threat wouldn't be effective. No one was stupid enough to get out there and die in vain. Some didn't leave immediately. They stared at the cave entrance for a while before retreating quietly. Their silhouettes flashed, leaving no trace behind. Those who stayed didn't move, and only half of them remained. They were the ones who had a reason to leave this extreme purgatory field as quickly as possible. They had reasons to survive. In the world out there, they had someone they cared about or grudges they needed to resolve. The danger that the cave showed didn't scare them or make them leave. Larky and Furlough were of the latter type. They stayed. The two second sky of King God realm exchanged uncertain looks. After a while, Larky suddenly said, "That kid must have arranged something in that cave. If we send a single warrior in there, he will likely be in danger. But if everyone goes in at the same time, I think the traps he has set won't work against them all." Pausing for a while, he looked at Furlough. "What do you say?" "Harumph! You know I must leave soon. How can I give up just like that?" Furlough gritted his teeth. No matter how strong he is, he must be weak while in his breakthrough to the new realm. As long as we break his barriers and see him, we can kill him easily. Many agreed with him. They soon finished discussing and joined hands to attack. They gawked for a while. Then the onlookers started dashing forward. They turned into many silhouettes and urged their god domain, advancing towards the cave. Both Leona's group in the Purgatory Star and the two in the Grand Palace in the Dark Firmament Star felt excited again. Their eyes were glued to the lake. As they knew it would be perilous inside, they had boosted their power as much as they could, releasing the god domain. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. All of a sudden, space slits appeared at the cave entrance, like floating sharp swords that sparkled dazzlingly. 3 warriors who jumped into the cave first didn't have time to scream as space slits had ripped their bodies and sucked their dismembered bodies in. They disappeared silently. Many villains screamed in fright and attempted to retreat. They didn't dare move further inside. However, as soon as the space slits appeared, they scattered. In the area where energy was gathering outside the cave, similar space slits emerged in every corner. Those space slits were long and narrow, but they were enough to dismember the warriors, leaving no trace of their prior existence. Although some were quick enough to dodge, they were attacked by the space splits. When the slits passed through them, their limbs disappeared bizarrely. Some were so unlucky that their heads disappeared into the void. Instantly, another 6 first sky of King God realm died tragically. F*CK. It's space power. My god, it's F*King Bad. A warrior cultivating space power is breaking through. Damn. Too bad. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Screams and curses resonated from the crowd. They were all ashen. They felt as if their hearts were torn apart, unable to think logically from extreme fright. Both Larky and Furlough were scared out of their wits. Those space slits had frightened them. They froze, not moving a single muscle. Leona relaxed and ate the crystal green fruits. She cast a glance at Ao Guduo, who looked pale now. She mocked. Did you think that everybody was an idiot? He dares to break through in the extreme purgatory field. Of course, he knows how to protect himself. Check it out and see the results of those idiots like you. Breaking powers, Upanishad, and stirring up space. This kid is space power, his main power Upanishad that is going through a breakthrough? Karthu was baffled. He suddenly found his words. I told you, he doesn't look like a careless man. Would he break through without arranging his defense? In the cultivation of space power, when a warrior breaks through the important realm and creates the god domain, space slits will appear thickly around him. It seems that we didn't consider this. No wonder why he isn't scared. Rochester also understood. He grinned. Seems like this brutal kid has planned this ahead of time. Those who wanted to take his life deserved to fall. While they were joking and discussing, space slits appeared more densely at the cave entrance in the extreme purgatory field. The oncoming warriors gawked. They halted in the area filled with space slits. No one dared to move an inch. They all became seriously cautious. At this moment, a magical intent domain expanded from the cave. It seemed to fuse with earth and heaven energy covering their heads. A solitary aura flooded out. Under the wicked effects of the dead Upanishad, those who stayed suddenly felt their soul fatigue, and their energy was grabbed by an invisible hand that pulled it into the cave. Fragmentary starlight flashed from time to time where earth and heaven energy had gathered. The starlight rolled like the Milky Way and became clearer. The extreme purgatory field seemed to not be able to conceal the starlight in this place. The starlight and the starry sea in outer space seemed to have a connection, creating a magnificent galaxy. Thick space slits that were created by condensed space, with a god domain of warriors cultivating space power, Upanishad. The soul burial ground was the domain of warrior cultivating dead Upanishad, while the beautiful galaxy was the unique form of the star powers god domain. 3 different powers, Upanishad, performed the distinctive god domains. The inmates who had jumped into this area wept without tears. They would never have imagined that Shuryen, who was hiding inside this cave, could have 3 cunning and mighty powers Upanishad at the same time. And what was hard to accept the most was that all his 3 powers, Upanishad, could create the god domains. This was unimaginable. It goes against the cultivating natural principles of warriors in the raging flame star area. When a warrior broke through the king god realm, only his main power could create the god domain. No matter how profound his auxiliary powers were, they would hardly be able to create the god domain. This was why each warrior had only 1 god domain. Also, most of the warriors chose only 1 power, Upanishad, to cultivate for the rest of their lives. The creation of the god domain hid the magical mysteries and principles of nature. Even the great sages couldn't tell how the god domain was created or understand its mysteries. Signs of 3 different god domains created from Shuryen's breakthrough not only shocked the intruders, but also people in the dark firmament star and the purgatory star. All 3 powers, Upanishad, creating the god domains. This is a miracle. Karthu muttered. How could he balance or fuse them? Rochester's eyes expressed fright. F***CK that brat. Ao Guduo gritted his teeth. An evil smile hung on the corner of Leona's mouth, but she didn't say a thing. The master of the divine nation, Dutianji, jolted up from his throne, his eyes blazing like torches. He gazed at the mirror in front of him, staying silent for a long while. His face distorted bizarrely. Princess Zi Yao covered her mouth behind him as she couldn't believe what her eyes showed her. Strange, dazzling light shot out from her beautiful eyes. Her soft body shivered slightly. I don't think there are miracles in this world. I believe what I see. Du Tianlu stood up from his mountain, walking to the corner and gazing at the lake. If he succeeds, he will bring another color to the raging flame star area. If he works for the divine nation, our territory would double shortly. No one doubted this. Leona, Karthu, Rochester, Delay, and even Ao Guduo quieted down. They didn't oppose his idea, creating 3 god domains while breaking through to the king god realm meant that Shur Yan's attainment in 3 powers Upanishad was all profound. At the same time, he could balance his 3 powers miraculously. They had never heard or seen anyone in the Raging Flame Star area who had 3 god domains. Today, many witnessed Shur Yan achieve such a miracle. He had filled this vacancy. His appearance told people that the martial path wasn't as narrow as they had always thought. They realized that a real, excellent warrior would not always cultivate just 1 power Upanishad and create only 1 god domain. This miracle broke this presumption, leaving a deep impression in people's hearts and revealing a brand new picture. People started contemplating. Even the master of the divine nation, the strongest warrior, Du Tianji, was baffled. He started to doubt the principles he had trusted. He couldn't help but be amazed at the magical features of the martial path. Are we all wrong about it? Du Tianji muttered. The general knowledge of warriors in the entire Raging Flame Star area isn't complete, is it? Are we all wrong about the mysteries of the martial path? Is our current explanation of powers incomplete? Father, perhaps people in the higher level continents aren't like us. They can cultivate more powers at the same time. Sure, Yan has the inheritance from that man, and that man wasn't from our Raging Flame Star area. Maybe he came from another higher level star area where people know the truth of powers Upanishad. Our understanding is shallow. At the very least, Shur Yan has proven that warriors could be able to create the god domain of all powers Upanishad they cultivate. Yao looked at him, talking in a soft voice. He has opened a door for us. It makes me more determined. I must escape. I must break all the chains to see if the sky outside is this brilliant. Du Tianji gave a low shout. His eyes expressed his resolution, proving that he has finally made up his mind. Chapter 782, King God Realm. Chapter 782, King God Realm. The sea star, thick space cracks, and the soul burial ground were released. These 3 primitive forms of the god domain were revealed at the entrance of the cave. Some strange phenomena had happened. Prisoners of the extreme purgatory field who intruded this place froze in the air. No one dared to move. Hazardous space slits were operating around them. If they moved, space cracks would cut their bodies. But no movement did not necessarily mean no harm. After the soul burial ground appeared, the unique features of this god domain were revealed. The prisoners soon felt their souls fatigue. They could even see the light specks that looked like fireflies flying out of their bodies. Just like the gathering energy, they congregated in that cave. Everybody was frightened and restless. Witnessing the 3 god domains with different attributes had shaken them. Leona, Aoguduo, and Du Tianji, the owner of the divine nation in the faraway dark firmament star, were frightened. They realized that the principles they had believed for so many years could potentially be wrong. Shur Yan's powers had opened a brand new door for those warriors. It told them that the martial path is constantly changing and that there was more than one way out. Cultivating many powers, Upanishad at the same time could lead them to a wider and brighter road. No one knew what was happening to Shur Yan in the cave. However, they all knew that Shur Yan was in the most critical phase of his breakthrough. Once he got through this challenge, he could step up to the sky and dazzlingly suppress any youth who was believed to be a genius. Inside the cave, more and more space slits appeared in front of the cave. 3 meters from the entrance of the cave, there were cut limbs of the 2 warriors who had jumped in first. They didn't think that there were more space slits in the cave. The moment they stormed in, their bodies were divided into 5 or 7 pieces, and the larger portions of their bodies were dragged into the space slits. They would never see the bodies again. Shur Yan sat indifferently inside the cave, surrounded by many space slits. From the outside, the pure earth and heaven energy that flowed looked like 5-colored lightning strikes that entangled him and slithered into his body like snakes. His body sent blazing sparks into the air. It looked like he was placed on a stone table, and the earth and heaven energy was the blacksmith that was forging him with a flaming iron hammer. To the majority of true God realm warriors, the pain of refining the God body would make them wish for death. However, Shi Yan's reaction was different. He was strangely calm. He had challenged things at the Acme for his whole life. He could endure the pains normal people could even think about enduring. His tough mentality wasn't something people could comprehend. The main reason for this was his strong foundation. His body had been quenched many times. He had felt all kinds of pains and tortures. If he had to compare, his creation of the God body today wasn't very hard to endure. Thus, he looked different compared to most of the warriors. He was calm and even a little numb. Earth and heaven energy brought the true power of the world. Just like a magical knife, it carved deep marks on his body to enhance it by a level. He had swallowed the pellets he took from Zi Yao, which helped with the creation of God body. Those pellets helped thicken earth and heaven energy, creating a fierce flood and accelerating his rate of absorption. Earth and heaven energy proactively seeped through his flesh, blood, bones, internal organs, and each vessel of his body. This energy seemed to have a magical effect that flooded his entire body and enhanced his bones' toughness, tenaciousness of the vessels, muscles, and tendons. He was like a divine weapon that was processed by different energies. He slowly became unbreakable. He was now as imposing as a mountain with tremendous, pure energy. His changes weren't only in his blood and flesh. His soul altar seemed to also undergo changes. The power Upanishad tier in his 3-tiered soul altar was covered with a layer of mysterious light. However, star, space, death, and life powers Upanishad were still visible. They were all wonderfully connected with the energy in his God soul, giving him a deeper knowledge of the nature of these 3 powers Upanishad. He just sat neatly like that and patiently let his body be developed. His soul guided the 3 powers Upanishad. The God soul and the 3 powers Upanishad had fused perfectly. The 3 powers Upanishad rose magically in a deep place inside his God soul. Each power became a chaotic, shining cluster, releasing an immense halo. The lusters of the seals of Upanishad were the signs of the God domain. When he understood his seal of Upanishad more clearly, those lusters would expand gradually to magically change his soul. Thus, the space slits appeared more and more outside his cave, and their coverage also expanded. The halo of the dead Upanishad had 2 layers. One was vigorous, while the other was cold and desolate. The vigorous layer covered his sea of Upanishad and protected his God soul and God body. The dead layer dispersed and affected those around him, absorbing their souls. This also made the prisoners and villains not dare to move outside the cave. They slowly lost their life force. Those people were covered in the dead layer, which had pulled the light spots of their life force and drew them back to the vigorous layer to boost Shi Yan's living energy and increase his strength. This also frighteningly increased the power of the absorption force of the dead layer. The dead layer took away the life force and sent it to the vigorous layer. Then it benefited Shi Yan's soul and God body, which would also boost the energy of the dead layer, making the soul burial ground more imposing. These 2 layers supported each other and increased their powers, and the one to receive these benefits was Shi Yan himself. At the same time, the star sea was the performance of the star seal of Upanishad. The starry sea was the external sign of the star Upanishad. The blinking stars in the sea of stars were thick and glorious. However, it was different from the dead Upanishad. The starry sea wouldn't initially attack living beings proactively. Shi Yan needed to use his soul to control it, as he was still in the critical time of his breakthrough. Naturally, he couldn't do this, which meant the mysteries of the Starry Sea God domain couldn't be performed. Even so, space slits of space power and the life absorption of the dead power were enough to keep him safe. He wasn't afraid of anyone who came to attack him. When the God domain was created, it would create a significant commotion according to some principles of nature, which led to the expansion of the domain's coverage and power. This was especially true for his space power Upanishad that created the space slits, the terrifying defense like a grand mountain. The dead Upanishad was a cunning and evil power that could attack the others proactively. As long as there were living beings near him, the dead Upanishad could show its nature and draw all of the creature's life force. Inside the cave, Shuryen stayed safe and comprehended his 3 seals of Upanishad and the magical powers of the God domains. He didn't notice the situations out there. Time flew hurriedly. Soon, the prisoners and villains in front of the cave didn't dare to move. Since their life force was being drawn away, they became dizzy and foolish unknowingly. With only one wrong step, they fell immediately into the space slits and died on the spot. After they died, their essence chi wouldn't scatter away. Just like the gathering energy, they flew into the cave, pouring into Shuryen's acupuncture points, becoming part of his powers. Those warriors continued to fall one after another into the space slits. Before each tragic death, the victim's life force was already too feeble. In the end, both Furlough and Larky didn't have the luck to dodge the danger. They fell dizzily into some space slits eventually. The 2-second sky of King God Realm were devoured. Their essence, chi, poured into the cave. Deep inside the cave, Shuryen didn't know what was happening out there. He still cultivated indifferently, refining his God body and creating the God domains. Without Shuryen's consciousness, the essence chi ancient tree in his body had expanded 3 times larger. The experts watching the scene fell silent, their eyes glued to the dark cave, waiting for something. Time flew quietly. 7 days later. Today, the God domains created by 3 different powers, Upanishad, suddenly disappeared. Earth and heaven energy that gathered here for a while had also gone, leaving no beam or trace. Outside the cave, cut limbs lay on the ground. No one died intact. Everyone concentrated, holding their breath as if they were waiting for something to happen. Even Leona was anxious as she didn't know the final results. After a while, a sturdy figure appeared at the cave entrance. He frowned, looking at those cut limbs on the ground. He smiled evilly, then walked away. He did it. He really did it. Du Tianle couldn't hold his surprise and screamed, "It seems like cultivating many powers at the same time is possible. Our belief has to change because of this kid. A man can have 3 God domains at the same time, each of them in perfect harmony with the others. This man is a miracle," Carthu said emotionally. "I think his real fighting in the extreme purgatory field starts from now. At the true God realm, he could kill the first sky of King God realm warriors. Today, he has finally reached the King God realm. I think that the opponents he fights will change from now." Rochester looked at Ao Guduo and laughed slightly. The hidden meaning in his words was explicit. Ao Gera has only the 2nd sky of King God realm. Would he become Shuryen's prey? Ao Guduo, be prepared to give me a life star. Leona smiled darkly. Joy filled her eyes as she knew she was not wrong. Dark firmament star. Zao, your fortune isn't bad. You've met such a magical kid. Du Tianji glared at Zi Yao before smiling strangely. Ao Gera is dead. I'm afraid that kid isn't weaker than him. If they encounter each other, I'm not sure who would win. He had always evaluated Ao Gera with high value. However, at this moment, he wasn't sure of anything. At this moment, Shuryen had overturned his negative situation, breaking through to the King God realm, striding to a brand new level. Chapter 783, Where the Domains. Chapter 783, Where the Domains. Shi Yan had never felt so fresh and powerful before. The king god realm in the Grace mainland was the highest existence. He had been on that continent for so long, but he had never seen anyone at the king god realm. Bao Ao, Jie Ji Canny, and even Xianming had tried for their whole life to reach the king god realm. However, due to the energy-draining situation in the Grace mainland, they were limited. Being unable to break through to this realm was the greatest regret of their lives. The time he had stayed in the Raging Flame Star area wasn't too long. It was just 8 or 9 years. However, in this short period, he had ascended from the true God realm directly to the King God realm and created the God domains. And he got 3 marvelous God domains. Strolling through the extreme purgatory field, Shi Yan let all of his heaven flames fly back to the soul altar. He didn't need to be cautious anymore. He was so confident. He believed that in the extreme purgatory field now, only the third sky of King God realm warriors could trouble him, and even they wouldn't be able to kill him. Walking step by step, he immersed in the joy of the magical God domains. Never had he felt so happy before. From just a single thought, the God domain of the dead Upanishad was activated. A 20-meter radius around Shi Yan was the maximum coverage of his dead domain. Big trees yellowed, flowers shriveled, and insects stopped crying. With another thought, the starry sea appeared. Magical starlight dots were created by his energy. They scattered beautifully and gloriously everywhere. His soul altar spun slightly, and his space power had activated its God domain. A powerful energy that could control space was urged. Within 20 meters around him, the wind stopped, foliage froze, and even earth and heaven energy were restrained. It couldn't move anymore. The 3 powers Upanishad included death and life, star, and space would create the God domain as his God's soul flickered. The 3 God domains had their own magical features. While moving, he tried them from time to time, restlessly. Staying inside the God domain of the dead and life power Upanishad, Shi Yan could absorb the energy of living beings around him to strengthen himself. While the creatures themselves didn't notice, they had their soul energy taken out. The God domain created by Star Power Upanishad was a space full of stars. Under this starry dome, his star martial spirit became sensitive. As his soul flickered, he could immediately hide in any star. Within 20 meters, he could change his location, disappear, and reappear in any starlight dots, giving them his magnificent powers to attack his enemies. The God domain created by space power wasn't as dangerous as the space slits when he broke through the new realm. Shi Yan understood that only a deeper understanding of space power Upanishad and the God domain could help him create the space slits that shielded him. When he gets to this point, he knew that no one would dare approach or ambush him. Space God domain had more magical features. Space of area that this God domain covering was restrained tightly. He only needed to urge his power and flicker a thought for all things inside his God domain, including air, energy, rock, and foliage to be imprisoned. Imprisonment was the basic specialty of Space Upanishad, one of the derived foundations of space power. He believed that in a battle with an opponent, urging his space power and creating the God domain would detain the other's body and soul in his space. Unless the other was prepared or had a force that was mighty enough to untie his bind, that warrior would simply be killed. Breaking through the King God realm had given him chances to create 3 God domains and enlarge his essence Chi Ancient Tree several times. Anyway, the benefits he had harvested weren't that simple. The God body is another advantage he got now. At this moment, the recovery ability of his immortal martial spirit had been upgraded. At the same time, his petrification martial spirit was also enhanced. His sturdy physique had reached a new level, which could be considered morbidly abnormal. Under this great time of quenching by earth and heaven energy, He had tried and found that even the 3 bone thorns he had forged couldn't break the defense of his god body. He would need to use the maximum power to even pierce through his body. Ordinary king god realm warriors who dared to engage in close combat with him would be torn apart, leaving nothing, not even the bone dust. Due to his strong foundation and excellent body conditions, the god body he had condensed wasn't something ordinary king god realm warriors could compare to. He had a premonition that even the 3rd sky of king god realm warriors couldn't have a tough god body like his. As his power had been improved many times, his confidence was boosted. He believed that if he had had his today's realm in the solar star exploding fragment field that year, even if he didn't manipulate the flaming meteorites, he could have fought bloody slaughter Katua without much struggle. After his realm was upgraded, his vision widened, and he had a huge confidence boost. He decided not to hunt first sky of king god realm warriors. His main targets were the prisoners and the villains at the 2nd sky of king god realm now. Once the purgatory token had reported the living energy of 2nd sky of king god realm warriors, he would attack them proactively. This would help him accumulate immortal demon blood. Hovering above a lake in the extreme purgatory field, Sher Yan's face was cold and harsh. A bloodthirsty gleam flashed in his eyes. While his thought flickered, so many stars twirled around his body, arraying a magical formation. Abruptly, he attacked someone in front of him. It was a Sea Clan brutal butcher at the 2nd sky of King God Realm. They had fought for a half a day already. The other had thought that he had finally found a soft persimmon that he could squeeze to get a purgatory token. Shortly, he knew he was wrong. Sher Yan wasn't a soft persimmon, but a ferocious beast that didn't bare its fangs. The god domain of his star power was created. Sher Yan's figure flashed in the starlight. Sometimes he disappeared, leaving no aura. The brutal Sea Clanman had water power. He was unceasingly expanding his god domain. 10,000 tons of water in the lake rolled into the sky, morphing into rough dragons. They attacked Sher Yan furiously. Mwahaha! Sher Yan sneered, waiting until the water dragons storming into his star god domain. He immediately created Space Power Upanishad, creating the god domain. Transparent water dragons, storming toward him, suddenly halted in the air. They froze bizarrely in front of him, unable to even wiggle. Disperse! Sher Yan pointed, and a strange light shot out, hitting each water dragon. Furious sounds of water flowing echoed. Those water dragons had turned back into currents of water, falling into the lake underneath. His figure moved. The lake was still, the wind stopped moving, and energy was restrained where he hovered. Except him, anything in his god domain couldn't move. The Sea Clan warrior grimaced. The 3 god domains had almost collapsed his mentality. Every time he thought that he could do it, Sher Yan's god domain changed to another kind, which made all his attacks fail. On the still lake, Sher Yan sauntered. Suddenly, he roared like a savage beast, disappearing into the starlight. In the next moment, he reappeared next to that Sea Clan expert. He retrieved his god domain and bumped into the other with his physical strength. Boom! An earth-shaking explosion echoed from the transparent water barrier created by the Sea Clan expert. His crystal-clear defense shattered like pieces of jade. Waterlight shot out. Sher Yan laughed louder, marching toward that warrior, engaging in a battle inside his god domain. He bombarded him with star power. Stars spun and shot towards him. The power of his body continued expanding endlessly. Light spots that scattered from the shattered crystal wall fiercely pierced his god body. However, they couldn't damage him. Space imprisonment. While he was battling enthusiastically, Sher Yan suddenly let out a low shout. The man in his god domain halted as if he was tied by so many ropes in the air. He didn't even move. Sure, Yen smiled while walking toward him. He patted the man's head. His big head exploded. Blood and brains scattered. Retrieving his god domain and taking in almost all of the essence chi in that dead man's body, Shi Yen grinned before standing up. Aye. Half a year had passed unknowingly. Shi Yen became a god of slaughter in the extreme purgatory field. Wherever he passed through, any villains he could sense had become a source of his immortal demon blood. During this period, he had accumulated experiences in using the god domains through many battles. His understanding of the three god domains gradually became profound. After each battle, he would quiet down and review to find the advantages and disadvantages of the god domains. In the next battle, he would try to minimize the disadvantages and promote the intimidating features of his god domains. After half a year of battling, he became fluent in using god domains. He didn't feel shaky when combining the power of the three powers. He gradually started to understand the secret of coordinating the three powers to reach its most powerful potential. Among the prisoners and villains he had killed, not only the first sky of King God Realm, at least 10 second sky of King God Realm prisoners were erased. The number of immortal demon blood he had accumulated was almost 1,000 drops. He used the immortal demon blood to replace his own blood. In his eyes, this event was getting closer. He thought that if he had enough time and the number of brutal persons in the extreme purgatory field was adequate, perhaps he could finish his blood replacement here. The vast extreme purgatory field was worth the most magical place in the entire raging flame star area. In this place, his perception of powers Upanishad had become much sensitive. After each battle, he always had a new harvest. His perception and understanding of the three power Upanishads had increased every day. Today, while he was searching his praise, he met his acquaintances, Yalin and Taimu. Their situation was apparently not good. They had wounds all over their bodies. They were distressed, as if they were trying to run away from someone. They were moving towards him. Shi Yen was surprised. Chapter 784, The Cunning Old Fellow. Chapter 784, The Cunning Old Fellow. Anusar. Yalin and Taimu were both at the second sky of King God Realm. They had followed Karthu for many years, so they must have various fighting experiences. Who could make them run with such haste like this? Stop! Shi Yen suddenly shouted. Yalin and Taimu didn't stop. In fact, upon seeing him, they started to attack. Yalin cultivated the earth power Upanishad. As soon as she activated her god domain, the land in her area suddenly twirled. Boundless earth energy immediately turned into a mist of dust, snatching over Shi Yen. Tai Mu didn't hesitate. Gusts flew around his body. The wind blades sparkled like shining knives, cutting hundreds of trees around him into pieces. Since they had been together for a while in the gravitational room, Shi Yen understood their powers Upanishad well. They were using wind and earth powers Upanishad. Once they urged the god domains, they could cooperate well, which made people not be able to fly to the sky or to get underground seeking escape. This is also why Karthu let them two enter the extreme purgatory field together. The two powers Upanishad exploded together. The gray dust rolled on the ground, working with the tornadoes in the air, covering Shi Yan's instantly. Shi Yan's consciousness was affected badly. Staying in that gray area, he couldn't locate their positions. Energy tornadoes were marching furiously, uprooting the giant trees. Such energy movement was strong enough to cut his body into small pieces. It was different from the prisoners Shi Yen had encountered. Yalin and Taimu's forces were tremendous individuals, as their understanding of earth and heaven powers were more profound. Their god domains had coordinated their attack together. After Shi Yen got covered, he couldn't get rid of it. The tornado rolled his body into the air, spinning it. Shi Yen felt dizzy immediately. Yalin and Tai Mu were the experienced warriors with long battling times in outer space. They had so many divine pellets. They trained their bodies marvelously while also using their wonderful powers, Upanishad. As Shi Yen stayed in their god domains, he had to be very careful. He immediately released his space god domain. Shortly, the energies of Earth and Tornado were frozen for 3 seconds. But he could hold them only for 3 seconds. After 3 seconds, their 2 powers got rid of his constraint and moved towards him again. However, 3 seconds to the king god realm warriors like Shi Yen were more than enough. Especially in fighting, it was enough for him to do many things. He escaped Yalin and Tai Mu's god domain, approaching them shortly. He shouted angrily, "What the heck are you doing?" While shouting at him, he accumulated the energy of his god body. Special powers of his twirled around him. Starlight spots as brilliant as diamond scattered around him thickly. Star Upanishad. Tai Mu screamed in astonishment. He suddenly woke up, shouting, "Yalin, he's real!" Yalin was startled. She scrutinized Shi Yen and then said, "In the gravitational field, you and I talked. How many siblings do I have?" "An older brother and a younger sister." Shi Yen frowned skeptically. "What did you ask that for?" Yalin calmed down, exhaling in relief. "So you're real." Tai Mu looked like he had finally put the burden aside. He panted, "I thought it came again. F***ck it. That freak has almost made me collapse mentally. So many illusions. I can't help it anymore. I can't differentiate reality from an illusion." Shi Yen was surprised. "What did you encounter?" The two retrieved their powers. The god domains disappeared. The area became calm again. "You've broken through?" Tai Mu's eyes were sharp, screaming with astonishment. "You've broken through in this extreme purgatory field." Yalin was frightened. She continued, shouting, "Monster!" Frowning, Shi Yen expressed his impatience. "True, I've broken through, but it doesn't matter right now. Tell me what happened. What did you do? Why did you need to hide? Who in this extreme purgatory field could put you into such a disordered state? A.O. Guerra's team or Madame Leona's team?" "None of them," Yalin and Tai Mu forced a smile. "Those prisoners, they besieged you?" Shi Yen was surprised, asking disbelievingly. "Although they aren't weak, you guys are experienced warriors who have been through perilous training. What happened?" "An old fellow at the third sky of King God Realm. He cultivates a peculiar power Upanishad that could create illusions. People, scenes, rocks, rivers, mountains. He can create everything you can name, just like a real world." Tai Mu was still scared. "In his illusions, we were attacked by so many friends, and even Sir Carthu. We almost got killed. Then, when we diverged, we would meet the illusion of each other. We would be ambushed wickedly. We are exhausted. He has been chasing us this entire time." Yalin felt helpless. Although the warriors in the extreme purgatory field are all at the King God realm, we aren't afraid of them when we join hands. However, that man has a special power. Until now, we haven't seen his real face. We only heard his sinister laughter. Shi Yen couldn't help but be stern. Third sky of King God realm? He knows how to create illusionary worlds and creatures. You guys couldn't use the soul consciousness to detect it? Our realm is lower than his. We can't break the illusion. The illusionary characters he created also have living energy fluctuations. We can't say if it's real or not. Tai Mu shook his head, unable to avoid a headache. Anyway, his power Upanishad's lethality isn't good. Otherwise, we wouldn't have survived until now. However, after getting deceived so many times, we're exhausted. Seems like your trouble isn't small. Shi Yen contemplated and then smiled. If we meet him, just join hands. Is that old man still here? Then his soul consciousness checked the purgatory token on his waist. Sure, Yen sensed carefully for a while, but he didn't find any beam of living energy. He relaxed his vigilance. I'm sure he is around here. This cunning old fellow is like a resentful ghost that will never disperse. He hasn't left yet. OF*CK. He has targeted us for our purgatory token. It would help him survive. Tai Mu cursed, facing the sky and yelling indignantly. Hey King bastard, if you have the guts, come here and fight. What is interesting about your stealthy operations? I like to hide the head and show the tail. I don't dare meet people. You guys should show mercy to me. A voice floated in the vast forest, like a wind they couldn't catch or locate. Interesting. Another prey at the first sky of King God Realm. I'm even more certain now that I could get out of this damn place. The sound of the voice wound around many times, sounding close occasionally and far away at other times. Sure, Yen changed his visage. He sensed the purgatory token the second time. His face darkened as he muttered. He can avoid the purgatory token sensing. Tai Mu and Yalin nodded miserably. How could he do that? Sure, Yen was baffled. My purgatory token has never failed in the extreme purgatory field. It's obvious that the old man's around, but we can't detect his living trace. We don't know. This is his dangerous feature. With the purgatory token, we would be the hunters. But now he knows where we are, but we can't detect him. We are under the light while he stays in the dark. We've become his prey. Yalin frowned and pulled her hair. This cunning old man is familiar with the extreme purgatory field. Seems like he hasn't been here only once. He can use his understanding of the topography and the special situation of each location to create illusions. If he didn't understand the terrain here like it was the back of his hand, he couldn't be so subtle. Little girl, you're right. Until today, I've been participating in the extreme purgatory field 5 times. I've been the prey every time. However, I've been living for well over 250 years. The extreme purgatory field is a good place. If I haven't reached the bottleneck of my realm and I can't make a good use of the conditions here, I wouldn't have to leave urgently. Perhaps I could give you a chance to live. The inwardly evil-hearted ridicule arose timely as if he was about to ambush. No matter how much they lowered their voices, he could still hear them clearly. What he had said paled Sure Yen, Yalin, and Tai Mu. Participating in the extreme purgatory field 5 times meant that he has been in the extreme purgatory field for at least 250 years. He was a condemned to death felon 200 years ago, as he was able to withstand the extreme purgatory field 5 times. He was definitely a tough character. According to him, if he hadn't reached the bottleneck of the peak of the King God Realm, he would stay for more. With such a character watching them and their purgatory token, Yalin and Tai Mu didn't know what to say. They could only blame their bad luck. In fact, I'm a nice guy. Actually, I don't need your lives. If you guys give me a purgatory token, I won't continue watching you guys anymore. How does it sound? The old man giggled in the dark, talking sinisterly. Your little buddy at the first sky of King God Realm is the weakest. It should be easy to kill him, right? Okay, kill him and you'll have an extra purgatory token to give to me. I'll let you guys go. What do you think? This old fellow said he was cunning and wicked enough to attempt to tear apart the relationship between Sure Yen and the other two. Hearing his words, Yalin and Tai Mu became silent. Their eyes sparkled strangely. Sure Yen shuddered inwardly. He couldn't help but snort. He looked at the two coldly and frowned, waiting for their decision. There are no friends in the extreme purgatory field, except for oneself. One shouldn't trust anyone else. This is what Yalin and Tai Mu had taught him before. Today, what they taught finally surfaced. Chapter 785, Thousand Fantasy Fields Domain. Chapter 785, Thousand Fantasy Fields Domain. Outside the extreme Purgatory Field, Du Tianlu and the 5 great feudal vassals were frowning as they had no idea what was happening in the Crystal Mirror Lake. A corner of the lake was covered by gray mist which concealed everything. Shi Yan, Yalin, and Taimu were there. Carthew's face darkened. The light sparkling in his eyes showed his fright. He turned and shouted at Du Tianlu, "What is happening? The last time I saw my 2 soldiers was 3 days ago. Where did that gray mist come from? Why does it hinder our view?" Du Tianlu frowned as he couldn't explain either. "I'm not sure. Perhaps someone who knows the mysteries of the extreme Purgatory Field has blocked the view from the outside, preventing us from seeing what is happening there." "Who is that?" Carthew snorted. "How are my 2 troopers?" Shaking his head, Du Tianlu answered begrudgingly, "I don't know either. I'm not the ones who designed this extreme Purgatory Field. It is a mysterious natural formation that is intertwined with the will of earth and heaven. Before our king was throned, the extreme Purgatory Field had existed. It is the most magical area of our divine nation. I don't wish to learn all of its mysteries. There is trouble now. Shi Yan is also there, and we don't know what is going on." Rochester spread his arms and shrugged. "I'm interested in this boy the most, but now I can't see anything. It has become too boring. Yalin and Taimu would soon face Shi Yan. I don't know what would happen between them." Delay chuckled. Although Yalin and Taimu weren't ordinary, Shi Yan has reached the King God realm. During this time, he has killed many warriors within the same realm. I'm really curious. Carthew's face grimaced. Of course, he knew that Shi Yan was tough. They had been watching Shi Yan the whole time. They paid attention to each of his battles. They noticed that the way he used energy and his domains were getting more profound day by day. They weren't surprised anymore seeing Shi Yan fight warriors whose realm was higher than his. None of the normal warriors at the second sky of King God realm could flee from his hunt. After half a year, at least 10 warriors had died in his hands. While they hadn't noticed, the number of prisoners Shi Yan had killed had surpassed the records of Delay, Yalin, and Taimu, and the 2 warriors under Rochester's command. His record was just a bit fewer than Leona's team and Aogera's team. According to the current situation, it would not be long before Shi Yan's record surpassed Aogera's. In the most critical time, Shi Yan, Yalin, and Taimu were all covered in the thick gray mist. As they couldn't see what was happening inside, everybody was irritated. Seems like someone is very familiar with the extreme Purgatory Field. He can affect the energy moving inside and stay hidden from our view. This one is experienced and cunning. I think he will have a close fight against Shi Yan soon, said Leona, frowning. Everybody was curious. They concentrated and gazed at the lake down there, but they couldn't see anything. Besides them, the master of the divine nation in the dark firmament star also frowned, his face cold and harsh. Father, what is happening? Why can't you see? Zi Yao was surprised. When the extreme Purgatory Field opened, wasn't it under your control? Du Tianji's eyes sparkled with a strange light. He contemplated for a while before saying slowly, I know how to open it, but I did not make it. When I got the divine nation that year, the extreme Purgatory Field had already existed. It has been there for tens of thousands of years. An imperial master of our divine nation had used the wonderful natural formation of the extreme Purgatory Field to make it. The mysteries in that formation are the most subtle and magnificent ones. I'm not good at this evil stuff. Of course, I don't know all of its mysteries. Imperial Master? Zi Yao was shaken. The divine nation hasn't had an imperial master for quite a long time. It's true. The imperial master position has been vacant for so many years. I wanted to offer him that position, but he rejected it. A bit of loss sparkled in Du Tianji's eyes. Zi Yao knew who he was talking about. The old man secluding in the solar star exploding fragment field was one of the top alchemists in the raging flame star area. Several hundred years ago, he was famous in this star area. The previous imperial masters of our divine nations were all famous. They had deep understanding of the nature of powers, Upanishad. Our source of power, Upanishad inheritance, was created by them. Unfortunately, there hasn't been an imperial master for several monarchies before my reign. Also, no one is qualified enough to hold this position. Du Tianji sighed. Usually, the imperial master will be in charge of the extreme purgatory field. But we don't have a suitable candidate, so I have to take charge myself. However, I've dedicated my life to the acme of power, so I didn't study about the heaven-way evil techniques. My understanding of the extreme purgatory field isn't deep enough, so... You don't know the reasons why. Yes, this limitless divine mirror of mine was made by the last imperial master of our divine nation. If it couldn't reflect the real situation of the extreme purgatory field there, I have no other alternative. What are the requirements to become the imperial master? Top-grade blacksmith and alchemist. He must acquire a firm grasp of natural formations, understand the nature of powers, be able to refine and force divine grade pellets and tools. He must also be able to carve formations, barriers, and restrictions, and achieve the best merit for the divine nation. Oh, Shiryan's a blacksmith too. Blacksmith. Du Tianji burst out laughing, shaking his head. This kid cultivates mixed powers indeed. He is greedy enough to have a bit of everything. Perhaps he is just an amateur blacksmith without a significant attainment. He can forge divine grade tools. Divine grade? Du Tianji was surprised. He couldn't help but shout, how could it be? I saw it with my own eyes. Du Tianji's face changed. He got startled and expression was odd. Extreme purgatory field. The cunning old man was still trying to drive a wedge between Shiryan and the other two. You know, I'm only one person here, so I need only one token. Even if I had more, it would be useless. I just want to get out of here alive. I don't want to be imprisoned in the extreme purgatory field. Our deal is quite simple. You kill that boy and give me his purgatory token. I will leave you alone. Simple, eh? He buzzed nonstop like a fly, trying to manipulate Tai Mu and Yalin. You two are the second sky of King God Realm Warriors, and you coordinate well. If I have to kill you, I have to use a lot of my energy. Perhaps I can be hurt, but he is different. He is only the first sky of King God Realm Cultivation Base, and he has broken through just recently. If you kill him for me, I don't need to use my powers and you can get rid of me. We all end up happy. What do you think? That old fellow used cruel and sinister words, which had poked right at their weakest nerves. His plan seemed to work. Yalin and Tai Mu looked touched, their faces uncertain. Shiryan was calm, but he was on guard. Actually, he didn't have a deep relationship with Tai Mu and Yalin. They had only met several times and talked a bit in the gravitational fields. This kind of relationship had no foundation. If they want to kill him to save their lives, Shiryan thought it would be possible. He stood and squinted. All of a sudden, he sat down quietly right in front of Yalin and Tai Mu. He stooped, breathing regularly as if he was musing on something. Yalin and Tai Mu looked at him with confused and uncertain faces. The seducing voice of the cunning fellow continued to attack at their weakest points. Sure, Yen didn't say anything. He closed his eyes like he was sleeping. He looked defenseless. His aura was retrieved. Yalin and Tai Mu's minds struggled for a while. They exchanged looks like they had finally made up their minds. They sat down cross-legged like Shiryan had done and steadied their affected mind. Slowly, they pulled themselves together. Damn you, You mean and shameless bastard. I almost got tricked. Tai Mu was foul-mouthed. Come if you do have power. Come kill the three of us. You mother***er. Stop using your tricks. Sure, Yen waited in silence with closed eyes. He grinned and he relaxed his tense nerves. Brilliant starlight spots appeared gloriously in the area of 20 meters around Shi Yen. The lights were blinding as the stars spun mysteriously around him. Yalin and Tai Mu maintained a safe distance from Shi Yen. They all released the god domains. They formed a triangle, but their god domain didn't overlap. All were waiting in silence. If you really want to court death, don't blame me. Sigh, too stupid. It's obviously an easy choice. Why do you make it more complicated like this? The floating voice of the old man swayed. Sometimes it was near them, and the other times it was far away. At the moment his voice arose, gray mist overflowed quietly. They covered the three of them instantly. Their god domains had no strange reactions or detected any unique energy fluctuation. It seemed this gray mist was just a normal cloud without any magical effects. However, the soul altars of Shi Yan's group were tense right after that gray mist engulfed them. It was like that mist had carried along some unknown dangers. Their soul altars suddenly shook. Shi Yan's god soul trembled while his face changed. He opened his eyes all of a sudden. Shadows started to appear next to him. Those silhouettes sat on the ground. They were Yalin, Tai Mu, and Shi Yan himself. Even the god domains looked alike. The one sitting on his left looked identical to him. That Shi Yan opened his eyes, looking around with astonishment. His bearings were exactly the same as Shi Yan's, giving him an illusion of watching himself in the mirror. Just like that figure, sitting not far from him were more than 10 Yalin and Tai Mu. All of them had clear living energy fluctuations. The purgatory token on his waist all of a sudden signaled countless of lives. When Shi Yan looked at that man, the man was looking back at him, too. While Shi Yan was perplexed, an evil smile beamed on the face that was identical to his. Shi Yan shouted inwardly. He didn't think much, but changed his god domain to the space restraining domain. Chapter 786. Break the Illusions. Chapter 786. Break the Illusions. Space Power Blockade. The whole world was suddenly silent. No wind, no sound. All the energies seemed to have simultaneously force quit. Everything stopped all of a sudden. The man that looked exactly like Shi Yan had his eccentric smile frozen. More than 10 Yalin and Tai Mu around Shi Yan halted, their face frozen in place. Shi Yan extended his arm, a divine light that departed from his fingertip, dashing like the lightning towards that man. Tut! His body exploded, turning into gray mist. A wisp of soul consciousness twisted, flashed from his body before it disappeared. Boom, boom, boom. His finger pointed on the youths sitting near him. They perished one by one, releasing a beam of soul remnant. Farther from him were the illusions of Tai Mu and Yalin. Shi Yan didn't dare act rashly. Each of the illusionary bodies had the living energy fluctuations, and his purgatory token had reflected their living signals. Shi Yan couldn't tell who was real and who were the replicas. As he couldn't tell which one was real, Shi Yan didn't dare act recklessly as he was afraid of hurting Yalin's and Tai Mu's real bodies. Space power. A sharp voice arose in the forest nearby. The cunning old fellow seemed to be scared. He screamed darkly. It has been so many years since I've seen someone using space power Upanishad. You're rare, really rare. I want to see if the space power Upanishad can break my 1,000 fantasy field's domain or not. When his voice stopped, shadows started to ooze out from nowhere, floating like ghosts that couldn't be caught. They all dashed toward Shuryen. Even though the shadows hadn't come close to him yet, the area that Shuryen's space domain covered suddenly had a tremendous change. Instantly, Shuryen couldn't see Taimu and Yalin anymore. He was standing on a small, isolated island. This island had some barren mountains. Rolling waves from the ocean lapped the shore. Shuryen could even hear the sound of waves and seawater moving. The shadows had disappeared, becoming part of his surroundings that his soul consciousness couldn't sense anymore. Taimu and Yalin weren't in this illusion. They were forced to move somewhere else. Shuryen's purgatory token couldn't detect them. That old cunning man understood the purgatory token's features well. His 1,000 fantasy fields domain would counter the ability to sense living beings of the purgatory token. He wasn't going to let Shuryen have any assistance. Understanding this anomaly, Shuryen didn't hesitate to take back the wisp of soul consciousness he had sent into the purgatory token. He didn't need its help anymore. The other's domain was peculiar and wicked as it could affect God's souls and sea of consciousness. Under such circumstance, Shuryen didn't release the soul consciousness anymore. Any creatures that appeared in this place would be treated as his enemies. The surroundings changed again. Gradually, flowers bloomed on this island. Each of them was so beautiful and fresh. Stars blinked in the night. Luxuriant, green foliage appeared. The small, cold island suddenly revived vigorously and brought people. Seeing this vibrant scene, Shuryen didn't feel comfortable. He vaguely felt like an invisible danger was creeping towards him, a danger that could attack him in any minute. A feeble wisp of energy, fluctuation that was hard to detect, flashed in the illusion. Shortly, flowers and florists on the island flew out as if they were just given powers. Strong energy fluctuations attacked. Billions of tons of seawater condensed into different kinds of sea monsters bearing fangs and claw, roaring crazily on their way. Shuryen's space domain couldn't stop them. Those florists and the sea monsters seemed to have a long time growing in his space power and got used to its features. When they attacked him, his space domain could not seal them. Shuryen understood that all that he saw were just hollow images, so his space power couldn't constrain them. However, the energy stored in them was real, which was the condensed energy of a king-god realm warrior. If Shuryen were careless, this kind of power could hurt him or even kill him on the spot. Seeing the danger coming, Shuryen was as calm as usual. His soul alter-spun a little bit, and his god domain changed. Countless stars appeared like precious gemstones. Shuryen looked like he was immersing in the sea of gems. Light shone gloriously around him. Star Power Upanishad was activated. Stars around him started to revolve fast. Shuryen put himself in the star sea flying as he pleased. His body flashed and arrived at different stars in just a blink. No one could detect his whereabouts. So many perilous attacks swarmed over him, but they could neither find nor lock Shuryen in the sea star. At the same time, the starry sea started to wear out their energy. Another god domain. The old man's voice reverberated in the air. Apparently he was startled. His voice trembled. In the center of his echo, a flood created by fierce energy stormed towards the center of the star sea. Boom! Shuryen's god domain seemed to take a formidable hit. The space of 10 meters around him shattered. Broken stars fell. The energy of his Star Power Upanishad was in disorder. All illusions vanished. Their energy fused into one big flow, turning into the furious flood current with a face that looked exactly like his. It snatched down from the sky and was about to swallow Shuryen. The island broke. Seawater ran fiercely, flooding the island. This fatal scene looked like the doomsday was coming. Shuryen felt his soul trembling seeing this. Death seal. His god domain changed again. Massive seals condensed in the sky. His dead Upanishad covered the whole area. The dead seal stamped the air. Shortly, Shi Yan was surrounded with numerous dead seal, covering the entire area. His negative energy crazily poured into the domain. His god body was swollen. Energy flowed massively in his vessels, unceasingly. Brutal energy gushed out from him, making each dead seal as big as a small mountain. They bombarded everything he saw. Wicked dead Upanishad spread out, restraining all of the oncoming attacks. At this moment, his quick life Upanishad found a strange beam of living being energy undersea. Gotcha! Shi Yan showed a faint smile, his face still stern. Big dead seals gathered and combined, making a giant hand that could even cover the whole sky. That hand then furiously pounded the sea bottom. Just like a breaking mirror, countless fragments of the illusions scattered under this attack. Shi Yan's surroundings became normal. Yalin and Tai Mu were fighting with their own illusions near him. The illusions entangling them also had vitality and energy fluctuations. However, as Shi Yan maintained his god domain in the mode of dead and life intent domain, all living energy fluctuations of creatures in his domain were amplified and became clearer. Shi Yan couldn't see the difference between Yalin, Tai Mu, and their replicas, but in his god domain the living fluctuations of illusions weren't as clear as theirs. It was enough for him. He could find their real bodies now. A deep hole appeared near him, which was created by the bombarding of his dead seals. Immense gray mist diffused from that hole. A skinny, rickety figure appeared in that gray mist. It was a sloppy, dirty old man with disheveled hairs and scabs. He was wearing a muddy, long gray robe. His face was also covered in dust, but his eyes were sparkling and fiery. 3 powers, Upanishad. 3 different god domains. Boy, how did you do that? Using 3 powers alternatively to break my 1,000 fantasy fields domain. I can't deny that I surrendered. I really want to know how you could create 3 god domains at the same time. The skinny old man floated in the gray mist like a wandering ghost. He looked at Shi Yan with a dark, gloomy gaze. I don't know. I've just created them not long ago. During the battle with you, I got to know how to shift between them subtly. Indeed, magical things could happen. Shi Yan was indifferent. If you want to use the 1,000 fantasy fields domain to delude me, I don't think it will be easy anymore. I can distinguish any creature in my domain to see if they are real or not. Evil power, Upanishad, the old man mumbled then snorted. Don't think that breaking my 1,000 fantasy fields domain means you won. Since you have only the first sky of King God Realm cultivation base, I can defeat you using only my power and my god body. The reason why I didn't show up is that I wanted to save energy. But if you break my god domain, I have no choice but to widen your knowledge. Let's see how vast the gap between my 3rd sky cultivation base and your 1st sky cultivation base is. He attacked immediately. Shi Yan became serious. He didn't wait until the old man struck his first attack. A thought arose, and the crazy hissing echoed. 3 bone thorns were invisible, leaving only the ear-piercing whistle in the air. They were moving across spaces, gathering energy. The old man suddenly became alert. He slightly discolored and squinted as if he was trying to detect the source of the sound. Shi Yan immediately entered the rampage realm. Shi Yan's eyes turned blood red as negative energy gushed out from his body. Pallid tentacles extended from each of his acupuncture points. This was the first time he urged the rampage realm after entering the King God realm. His refined body looked like iron or jade shriveled at the moment energy was accumulated. Scarlet halo bloomed from his body and reflected in his eyes, making him look more eccentric and evil. Bloodthirsty, wild energy erupted like a volcano from his god body before fusing with his magical dead intent domain. The coverage of the soul burial ground was tripled, reaching an astonishing 30 meters. Desperation, bloodthirstiness, resentment, and other negative feelings multiplied. The ability to steal life force increased strongly. In this moment, Shi Yan looked like a demon that crept out from the bottom layer of hell. His body diffused the aura of termination. His existence seemed to destroy all creatures in the world. 8 chapters for today. Happy now. Chapter 787, Counterattack. Chapter 787, Counterattack. After breaking through to the King God realm, this was the first time Shi Yan had used all of his powers. In his previous dozens of battles, he had encountered some second sky of King God realm warriors. However, such characters couldn't stimulate all of his powers. Sure, Yan didn't use much energy to kill them. Only this old man with his third sky of King God realm and the eccentric power Upanishad had made him use the Rampage realm, which had taken all of his energy. Standing on the freezing ground, Shi Yan squinted. His blood-red eyes were sharp and cold, like sabers that gazed at that old fellow. The hissing of the 3 bone thorns was like a crying ghost, which irritated people. The bone thorns with space power could be invisible and didn't even have shadows. It was hard to locate or lock them down using soul consciousness. Although he was at the third sky of King God realm, in the horrifying buzzing, he had no other way around but spending a part of his energy to stay cautious, preventing the 3 bone thorns. Inner fantasy thousandfolds. The old man lowered his voice and shouted. His shriveled body leaped up all of a sudden. Then, the senile man turned into a 10-meter-tall giant. His skinny body swelled as if it contained endless power. He faced the sky and roared while swinging his arm. With the sound of bone exploding, a palm pressed down from the sky, snatching Shi Yan, covering all of the area where he was standing. Refined energy compacted in his palm like so many electric god dragons, creating the whole new world in that instant. Shi Yan looked at the sky. He saw many shadows in that giant palm. They were Shi Jian, Shi Tai, Yang Tian Emperor, Yi Tian Mo, Xia Exinyan, He Qing Man, and Bing Qing Tong sisters. In that palm were all the people Shi Yan cared about. At this moment, they became his archenemies. They were storming towards him with cold and sinister faces. Each of his loved ones became the killer who wanted to take his life. Energy revolved everywhere, swarming toward Shi Yan. His soul altar was affected. His god soul was enchanted. Sorrow, disappointment, and deep bitterness arose in his heart. While he was puzzled, those people became the real death which wanted to kill him. Heart delusion technique. This was the bizarre and evil feature of the old man's power Upanishad. It could affect people's hearts, delude their minds, and make them believe that all that they saw were true. Seeing his family members and friends want to take his life, Shi Yan, this cold and harsh person, felt lost. His heart made him restrain his enormous energy as he was afraid that he could hurt his loved ones. You've forgotten us, and you just want to live your good life, don't you? Why haven't you returned yet? Don't you know that we are struggling in the dead puddle of the Grace mainland because of energy shortage? Now that you have a good life, do you remember us? You forgot US, didn't you? His family members and friends threw question after question at him, which messed his mind up more. Sure, Yan was baffled and didn't know how to answer them. His mind was chaotic. His will was reduced. He couldn't release all of his powers. At this moment, Shi Yan fell under such struggling circumstances. The giant body that the old man had created beamed a sinister smile, while his other hand also pressed down. He performed the other magical illusions a second time, which was to deceive people's hearts. Those silhouettes stormed over, bombarding their attacks on him. Each figure had turned into a sharp attack with pure energy. All fell on Shi Yan. Boom, boom, boom. Shi Yan's upright body was hit hard, settling down to dozens of meters underground. A massive hole appeared right where he had just stood. Illusions disappeared. Shi Yan was kneeling inside a 100-meter large hole. Blood covered his entire body. His bones cracked, and so did his eyes. He woke up immediately. Intensive pain spread across his body while his energy was chaotic. Forces in his body shot like lightning. All had lost its balance. The struggling Shi Yan thought that if he died, he would feel better. The circulation of his energy and power was stagnant. The giant body of the old man stood vigorously. He stooped and watched Shi Yan in his 100-meter deep hole. He was surprised. "Kid, your god body isn't broken yet." With his third sky of King God Realm cultivation base, the first sky of King God Realm warrior's body couldn't bear much of his attacks. It would explode, and only the soul altar could escape. He thought that Shi Yan must be dead under his savage attack. Unfortunately, he had underestimated the toughness of Shi Yan's god body. His attack had just hurt Shi Yan badly, and it couldn't explode his body. "Hey, old freak, I won't let you live so comfortably." Shi Yan had blood all over his face. Blood also trickled from the corners of his eyes. He looked brutally angry. "I hate family members and friends, illusions the most. Since you're so shameless and sinister, don't blame me for giving you the same treatment." Then, Shi Yan shot out of the hole like a sharp sword. His god domain was filled with negative feelings like death, desperation, resentment, bloodthirstiness, and more. They condensed into a torrential sea of negative energy. Just like the beast getting out of its rain, it flooded over the old man like a Milky Way, covering his entire area. Not only did the old man know how to delude people with illusions, in his god domain, Shi Yan knew how to use the same mysterious trick. Filled with resentment, Shi Yan's god soul manipulated the 3 bone thorns and got them out of the space slits. As soon as they appeared, the 3 bone thorns aimed at the old man's eyes and nape, stabbing directly like 3 silver lightning strikes. The old man discolored. He didn't expect that the bone thorns could have space power and be so cunning. He urged his energy, creating moving halo covering his body. Those moving halos looked like small fish swimming around him. When the 3 bone thorns arrived, the halo entangled them all. Shi Yan's bone thorns looked like they were tied by something invisible, sinking into a swamp. The bone thorns Shi Yan had refined himself were made of a bone of a level 11 beast with more than 10 auxiliary materials, which greatly enhanced their hardness and sharpness. This weapon of his had reached rank 1 divine grade. Although it was the defense of a 3rd sky of King God Realm warrior, hurriedly countering the 3 bone thorns had used all of his power. While the old man used his energy to create the moving halos that prevented the 3 bone thorns, he didn't have extra energy to create more illusions. Shortly after, all illusions that were affecting Shi Yan, Taimu, and Yalan vanished. Shi Yan used his negative feelings to create the negative sea engulf the old man. He didn't hesitate and clapped his hands in front of his chest. Lights congregated between his palms, creating a big light sword. Shi Yan slashed his sword, fiercely stabbing through the negative sea and aiming at the old man's glabella. At the same time, Yalan and Tai Mu released their god domains after they had got rid of the illusions. Tornadoes swept around. Earth changed. Beams of furious energy fell on the sky like shooting light from outer space. They all aimed at the old man. The 3 bone thorns struggled to move due to the moving halos. As if they had consciousness, they retreated and disappeared into folds of space. At this moment, the negative sea, which was filled with evil and wicked negative emotions, had engulfed the old man. Although he was good at deluding people, the old man was affected. He seemed to be dragged into hell. What he saw were all the bloody ghosts and demons that surrounded him. His god soul was affected so that he wouldn't be able to create the illusions in just a short period. Right at this moment, the light sword slashed down. This sword made the old man stop making illusions and to focus on gathering energy to create the moving halos around his body for defense. The light sword slashed down grumblingly. Light shot out everywhere. The beams of light that had created the divine sword flew out, shifting into tens of thousands of stars that darted towards him. Twirling gusts wreaked havoc everywhere, covering the old man. Under his feet, a heavy, restraining force pressed the old man down on the ground, keeping him from flying away. Yalin and Taimu were both the second sky of King God realm warriors. As they were the troopers under Karthu's command, they had enough fighting experience. They were good at continuous attacking. After they got rid of the illusions, they immediately released their powers. The intimidating scene they created was not less than Yan's. Swoosh! A wisp of divine light appeared. Yan walked to that old man. His soul flickered and the god domain changed again. Both of his hands joined together, and a magical effect was created. He held the space domain tightly in his palms, making an incomparable space mystery. Massive light balls bombarded the old man instantly. Space imprisonment! Yan shouted. Crack, crack, crack. Cracking sounds echoed from the space where the old man stood. It seemed that everything there was imprisoned. However, wind and earth power Upanishads of Yalin and Taimu were exceptions. They were still flowing furiously. The old man's body stopped moving. Countless moving lights around him were frozen eccentrically. Yalin and Taimu's powers hit him immediately. Explosions continued. Light sparks shot out from the old man's god body. Shortly after, that old man looked like Yan with blood covering him entirely as if hundreds of sabers and swords had slashed him. He was in utter confusion with disheveled hair, giving him a funny and pitiful look. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The hissing sound of the bone thorns arose again. The 3 bone thorns appeared, stabbing his chest and back. PFFF. The bone thorns pierced the old man's god body. Bones cracked. The old man spat out blood. However, his face glowed strangely. He then disappeared like a ghost, leaving no trace. All of his aura, energy fluctuations, and life magnetic field were gone. No one could detect him. Yalin and Taimu walked over after the old man disappeared. They frowned while searching, touching their purgatory token to see if they could sense something. 8 chapters for today. Happy now. Chapter 788. Break into the prohibited area. Chapter 788. Break into the prohibited area. I sense living energy fluctuations in 5 different directions. Yalin stroked the purgatory token, frowning while scanning everything around her. She talked with a slight headache. Taimu scowled and had a worried look. I don't know how this old freak affected the purgatory token to deceive us. His aura currently signals in 5 different directions. I don't know which way we will find him. Yan walked over to them. Blood dripped from his body. He wiped away a trickle of blood on the corner of his mouth, smiling coldly. The signals in all 5 directions are all fake. This old freak is really cunning. Yalin and Taimu couldn't help but stare at him for a few seconds. Later on, Yalin said, "You are truly fierce. You have become so mighty after breaking through to the King God realm." In the previous battle, Yan was the main force as his power had stopped the old man for a while. That was the golden chance for Yalin and Taimu to attack and wound him. If Yan hadn't distracted the old man, they would have had no way to get rid of the illusions so quickly. And of course, they would have had no chance to damage that man. They had seen the battle between Yan and the old man. They understood that they didn't have the means to counter that old fellow, but Yan did. Although their realms were 1 level higher than his, they had had no way of dealing with that old fellow. The powers Yan had demonstrated frightened them. Follow me. I know where he is. CK him. This old dog is too cunning. He has provoked us to separate and make us kill each other so that he could clean us up at the end. When he saw that we didn't buy it, he used the illusions to delude us. Basically, he didn't want to spare any one of us alive. Shi Yan snorted, then continued. I've left a wisp of soul consciousness in his sea of consciousness. I can locate him. The directions our purgatory tokens have sensed are all made up. None of them is true. You're at the first sky of King God Realm, but you could leave a beam of your soul consciousness in his sea of consciousness. Are you sure? Yalin's eyes brightened, not believing him. Tai Mu gawked. Impossible. You and he are at two different levels. It's possible that he can leave a beam of his soul consciousness in your sea of consciousness. But how could you? I've cultivated special powers, Upanishad. My soul consciousness has mixed with space power. It can avoid his sensing for a short while. However, it won't last long. We should hurry. If we are too late and he deletes my wisp of soul consciousness, we won't be able to find him. Yalin and Tai Mu reacted quickly to what he said. They nodded and didn't linger. Shi Yan took the lead. His body flashed like the rainbow, weaving through the forest like a shuttle. Yalin and Tai Mu stayed close behind him. After 1 hour, he halted, looking at the valley in front of them and waving his hand. This place. Yalin and Tai Mu stopped, looking at that valley disbelievingly. Impossible, they shouted. The valley in between the mountains was covered in layers of gray shadows and mists. Folds of barriers were set that covered the whole area. Chaotic energy stayed inside the barriers particularly. It seemed to hide the extreme dangers. That area was apparently a prohibited land in the extreme purgatory field. The magical extreme purgatory field had so many similar areas. When normal participants encountered such places, they would try to avoid them at all costs. No one dared to intrude. Rumors said that those barriers were made of the initial natural formations of this land. The imperial master of several previous generations had created them. Let alone the participants, even the owner of the divine nation, Du Tianji, couldn't understand all the mysteries of those barriers. Before the participants entered the extreme purgatory field, the host would explain and tell them to stay away from those prohibited areas. According to them, those forbidden areas were the key nodes that created the extreme purgatory field. These areas hid so many mysterious dangers. If they entered those places rashly, their soul altars could possibly vanish. They could also break the balance of the extreme purgatory field, which would prevent it from functioning properly. Almost all the participants followed this rule. They wouldn't enter these places willingly. Out of those who dared to intrude, not many got out alive. Magical energy, fluctuations signaled from that valley, stating that it was one of the banned lands of the extreme purgatory field. Shi Yan wouldn't dare intrude such a place if he still had his previous cultivation base. He would leave early to get away from running into any unexpected troubles. However, it was different now. That cunning old fellow was hiding in there. Once he could recover and show up for a second time, he would bring greater dangers. If they didn't take the chance to destroy him when he got hurt, Shi Yan would never forgive himself for not preventing this wicked man from doing evil deeds. He dared to get in there. What are we afraid of? Shi Yan glared at Yalin and Tai Mu, his face persistent. Whether you are coming with me or not, I'm going in there. This cunning old fella has grudges against us. He won't leave us alone easily. He is much more familiar with the extreme purgatory field than we are, and he can even dodge the purgatory token sensing. If he is alive, he will always be some hidden danger. We must destroy him now. That freak has joined the extreme purgatory field many times. He must be familiar with this place. If he dared to get inside, I think he has some backup. We don't know anything about this place. Isn't it too risky? Tai Mu said with a worried expression on his face. He couldn't make up his mind. Yalin frowned as she struggled to decide whether to get in there or leave. Perhaps the prohibited area hides some secrets related to the extreme purgatory field. Maybe due to those secrets, that old man could dodge the purgatory token sensing. If he might know that, why can't we? Shi Yan pondered for a while and then shouted, "I must get in there!" Then he flew like a sharp sword, piercing toward the barriers covering the valley. Boom! It was like he had bumped into a giant rubber ball. His flying body bounced back with a tremendous force. An immense energy ran through his body. The impact made him dizzy. Confused, Shi Yan went back over to Yalin and Taimu. His face darkened. Strong barriers. Hard to break. I can't pierce through it. Damn it. How did he do it? He must know the mysteries of the barriers. Yalin's face was somber. She hesitated for a while and said, "I think we should give up. If we take risks and intrude, I'm not sure if we can gain the upper hand in his familiar fighting arena. However, if we attack him outside, we can join hands and win." Tai Mu supported her. "Shi Yan, don't act rashly. Being stubborn isn't always good. People who can achieve big accomplishments are all crazy and stubborn." Shi Yan contemplated for 1 second and laughed sinisterly. "It is just a barrier. I think I will be able to break it." Then his thoughts flickered. The sky-breaking shuttle appeared from the storage ring. He sent a beam of his soul consciousness into the shuttle. "I want to break that barrier. How much energy do you need?" 1/3 of your power." "Okay." Wisps of fine energy circulated, rolling grumblingly and massively pouring into the sky-breaking shuttle. Receiving the energy from his body, the sky-breaking shuttle, designed to break all kind of barriers and restrictions, turned into a shooting light that tore layers of barriers, flying toward the center of the forbidden land. Shi Yan turned around, glaring at Tai Mu and Yalin. He ignored their astonished faces, turned into a bunch of light before disappearing shortly. He broke it? Did he just break it? Tai Mu's eyes showed that he couldn't believe what he just saw. He shook his head. Who is this boy? How can he be so magical? No wonder why he has the potential to replace Ao Gera. He is such a tough character. I finally know why Master Karthu favors him. Yalin contemplated for a while, her face astonished. She turned to Taimu. "What should we do now?" Taimu was hesitant. "We don't know the situations in there. If we barge in, I'm not sure if we will be safe. The old man is a third sky of King God Realm Warrior. This place is his den. I don't think intruding is a good idea." Yalin pondered for a while and nodded in agreement. "Forget it. We should wait for a while. I know intruding into someone's territory would be taking a big risk." While they were talking, the light passage created by the sky-breaking shuttle gradually vanished, cutting off their entry. Even if they wanted to get in there, they lost their chance. Dash! The scene changed subtly. Shi Yan was standing in a beautiful, blooming valley. 2 streams crossed each other, which were clear enough to see the bottom. Small fish swam back and forth happily. Wild grass grew up to people's waist in every corner of the valley. They looked like the fuzz of a giant beast. The air was fresh, cool, and humid in the valley. Earth and heaven energy were very thick. The wild grass was mowed in a small area of the valley where a small cottage stood. The door was open, revealing an old, pale man using pellets to recover. He was the old man Shi Yan had encountered. In the moment Shi Yan saw the man, the old man also noticed him. He jolted up, his expression changing dramatically in surprise. He shouted, "Kid, how did you get in here? Didn't those barriers make you struggle? How could you?" "Nothing is impossible." Shi Yan frowned. His eyes were still blood-red as he was maintaining the rampage realm. Energy boiled and rolled in his body massively, his aura brutal and malignant. He walked step by step towards that old man. His eyes became more ruthlessly bloodthirsty. You got hurt badly. You want to hide and recover in here so that you could continue playing with us. Haha, you have a good place indeed. Seems like you've been staying here for a long time and got familiar with the conditions. That old man stopped restoring his aura and walked out of his cottage. In front of him were the two crossing streams. He had installed the net to restrain the fish in the streams. It seemed that he kept the fish for food. The whole scene was beautiful and harmonious. The old man stood by the stream, and he stooped to watch the small fish, inhaling the pleasant fragrance of flowers permeating the air. He wasn't tense or anxious at all. He even beamed a smile at Shi Yan. I'm glad you came. My purgatory token is here now. Shi Yan smiled, slightly shaking his head. It won't be so easy. Chapter 789, Deterrent Force. Chapter 789, Deterrent Force. A corner of the Purgatory Star. Leona, Aoguduo, and the others frowned while looking at the lake, their faces astounded. Yalin and Taimu reappeared. After the battle between Shi Yan and the old man finished, their surroundings reappeared. In the area they had fought, there was a deep pit that could be recognized from 1,000 miles away. Yalin and Taimu were discussing something. Where is Shi Yan? Karthu knitted his brows. There was a battle. Who did they fight? Shi Yan? Possibly. Rochester curled his lips. But where is that kid? If Yalin and Taimu fought Shi Yan, who would win? It would be a pretty even match, Delay squinted. Anyway, it seems like Yalin and Taimu won. Shi Yan disappeared. Did he get killed? That was what he wanted to see. Karthu, your subordinates are still enthusiastic. Haha. Aoguduo grinned. Shi Yan has killed a lot of people. He brought death, now he has to bear it. If he got killed, it would not be abnormal. Did you order Yalin and Taimu to do something? Leona's face darkened. A gleam of brutal thought sparkled deep in her dark green eyes. Karthu was scared out of his wits, and he kept shaking his head. How could I? I like that kid a lot. I have treated him well. In my gravitational room, he spoke with Yalin and Taimu. I didn't think they would battle each other. As he explained, Leona snorted and didn't say more. Some force had covered that area. I don't know what happened, but I think the three of them won't compete against each other, Du Tianli said uncertainly while rubbing his chin. What happened? Karthu mumbled to himself, curious about the situation. The situation was similar in the dark firmament star. Du Tianji also had his suspicions. He looked at that giant mirror with astonishment. He was baffled for a while, then muttered, Our divine nation hasn't had an imperial master for a long time. I know the previous imperial masters all lived in the extreme purgatory field. That place should store their inheritance. After this training ends, it's time for us to find an imperial master. How about the business you have done? He glared at Ziyao. Ziyao's bold brows knitted together. Her beautiful eyes flared a strange halo. She pondered for a while, then shook her head. He doesn't want to take the imperial master role. The knot in his heart hasn't been untied yet. It seems that I will have to work on him myself. Du Tianji nodded as if he already knew this result beforehand. After screening him, I can say that he is currently one of the most impressive alchemists of the entire raging Flame Star area. If he agrees to assist the divine nation, we will have more strong experts. Sigh, only if we had an imperial master he could inherit from the few generations before him, we would have been able to give a clear path. What a pity. It is shameful for me to talk to him. Yao kept silent, her face complicated. She didn't know exactly what had happened that year. She wasn't sure if Du Tianji's shame was related to her mother's death. Zhao, you're not young anymore. Do you have anyone in mind right now? Du Tianji suddenly asked. Yao's beautiful face blushed. She shook her head shyly. I don't want to think about this for the time being. Previously, old Fan of the 9-Star Chamber of Commerce told me about his son. You've heard about his only son, Fan Tianpa. His background and abilities are not weaker than Ao Gera. In the Raging Flame Star area, the name of Fan Tianpa is well known. His bearings aren't bad either. I heard that he is handsome. He is also excellent in many aspects. You know old Fan's status and position in the 9-Star Chamber of Commerce. If we want to talk about the perfect match for you in the Raging Flame Star area, he would be the one. What do you think? No. Xiao shook her head after contemplating for a while. I don't really know about this at the moment. All right then. I also need time to think. Consider him. Du Tianji's eyes sparkled. The ethereal god realm is a big door. I don't dare go before preparing. However, I have to do it. If something happens to you, you better find the man in the solar star exploding fragment field. He will take care of you. Father, if something happens to you, what about our divine nation? Yao forced a smile. The 5 great feudal vassals have their own forces. They're almighty. Without you, who would suppress them? Du Tianji kept silent. After a while, he answered deliberately, I believe in their loyalty to the divine nation. But delay! Xiao wanted to say something, but she didn't finish. Do not babble. Du Tianji shouted, giving an angry look. When I'm about to break through, I'll have my arrangement. Yao nodded begrudgingly. Her look shifted to the shining mirror once again. She didn't know why she was worrying about Shi Yan. Perhaps it was because she didn't want anything bad to happen to him. She had heard about Fan Tianpa of the 9-Star Chamber of Commerce. She knew he was a great character, but she didn't know why she had no interest in him. One of the forbidden lands of the extreme purgatory field. The old man, who was good at using illusions, stood nonchalantly where the 2 streams crossed each other. He silently watched the fish swimming back and forth. Are you familiar with this place? Sure. Yen walked over to him in a normal pace. His calmness was scarily abnormal. Yeah, I got used to this place. I survived the extreme purgatory field on many close occasions, thanks to this place. The old man scooped water with his hands and drank it. He stooped and chuckled. I'm hurt, and so are you. In this place, you won't have any backup. You didn't recognize how perilous this situation is for you, did you? I'm glad you came. This means I can get your purgatory token. Get out of this damn place alive and gain back my freedom. You think so? Shi Yan grinned. Then I want to see how you can take the purgatory token on my waist. Yeah, you're right. We're both wounded. But there's one thing you'll never be better than me at. I am younger than you, and my recovery ability is much faster than what you think. Young? Being young is useful, my ass. The old man finally stood up, looking at him in the eyes. Kid, if you want to court death, don't blame me. You just want a purgatory token, right? Shi Yan was surprised for a while. He said, in fact, your wish is easy to fulfill. If I can help you, will you share the secrets you know with me? It's just a purgatory token. I'm sure I can get it for you. The old man was caught off guard, but he still laughed out of interest. What do you mean you will get a purgatory token for me? You know what that means, right? I don't know you, but I know you want to kill a participant, the young, talented, and favored subordinate of one of the 5 feudal vassals, right? Will you do this for me? Why not? Shi Yan pursed his lips. If I don't kill them, someone else will. I have someone I must kill in this place. He's hunting me down with all of his best efforts too. The old man didn't hasten. He stretched leisurely, glaring at Shi Yan. Tell me, what happened? Have you ever heard about Ao Gera? Shi Yan pondered before asking. The old man's eyes got colder. He snorted. Of course I know him. Ao Guduo's nephew, a genius of the divine nation. You want to kill him? Shi Yan nodded. Ah, You've been idle in the extreme purgatory field for so many years. But how do you know about Aogera? It seems like you hate him. What happened? I haven't been out for all these years, but people will be put in the extreme purgatory field from time to time. From them, I get information of the world outside. The old man snorted with a cold visage. I don't like people who are related to Aoguduo. Aoguduo has imprisoned me here. Aogera is his nephew, who has outstanding performance. Of course I have to notice him. If I had known he was here, I would have found and targeted him. Whatever will irritate Aoguduo, I will do them all. Aoguduo captured you? Haha, interesting. Seems like we have common goals. Shi Yan laughed evilly. By the way, what did you do to get yourself jailed here? It has nothing to do with you, snorted the old man. Shi Yan just laughed, unbothered by his response. 100 meters away from the old man, he took off his clothes, discarding them conveniently before stepping into the stream to wash the bloodstains on his body. The old man's eyes suddenly sparkled with divine light as he focused on the young man. Using the stream's fresh water to wash away the blood on his body, Shi Yan revealed a refined iron-like body that didn't show even a single cut. The old man had fought him just 1 hour ago. He understood that although Shi Yan's god body didn't explode, he received a lot of cuts and wounds. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had so much blood on his body. However, Shi Yan now stood vigorous without a single scratch. Energy in his body circulated smoothly. His god body shimmered, showing that he was in his peak condition. Nothing in his body provided evidence that he got hurt badly. After 1 hour of adjusting his aura and energy, there was not much change for the old man. The old man still had a lot of wounds on his body, the holes deep to the bone that the 3 bone thorns left on his chest and back were still there. His waist, abdomen, arms, and legs were covered with cuts, which were caused by Yalin and Tai Mu's bombarding powers. Sure, Yen was no longer damaged. This discovery silenced the old man as he had planned to attack him one more time. He suddenly realized that Shi Yan intruding this place alone and bragging in front of him wasn't just mere boasting. There was a reason why he had such confidence. In front of the old man, Shi Yan washed before putting on new, clean garments. All of a sudden, he urged the power of the immortal demon blood, pouring it into his arm. His iron fist pounded the ground grumblingly. Boom, boom. The impact from his fist touching the ground caused great tremors. An area of several thousand meters seemed to get hit by a meteor. The ground cracked as if there was an earthquake. The pits that appeared were so deep that people wouldn't be able to see the bottom. The condensed energy of the immortal demon blood was sent to the ground, creating an earth-shaking scene. The tremendous energy ran deep under the extreme purgatory field. Grumbling noise from the tremors continually echoed. The mountain near the valley was trembling as if it was about to collapse. Such a scale of damage was really scary indeed. Even the old man at the King God realm discolored in fright. He didn't dare act rashly anymore. Shi Yan retrieved his powers, looking at the dozen-meter deep pit in front of him with satisfaction. He turned around, smiling at the old man. You still want to ambush and kill me, eh? Yeah, do you still think you would succeed? The old man's face darkened and he said nothing. Can we talk for a while? Shi Yan calmed down, strolling towards the old man, his face casual and peaceful. He wasn't worried about being ambushed. The old man's face was gloomy and uncertain. He gazed at Shi Yan for a while and said, True, you've proven your abilities. I can't kill you easily, it is true. All right, I'll go with the less risky option. What do you want to know? Chapter 790, Forbidden Areas Wonder. Chapter 790, Forbidden Areas Wonder. I want to know how you are able to avoid the sensing powers of the Purgatory token. How can you hide your life magnetic field? And how did you enter this forbidden place? Sure, Yen stood firmly by the stream. Although he remained alert, he looked nonchalant. Sure, Yen didn't think that this old man would attack him for the second time. He could tell that the old man should understand now. Indeed, he didn't dare attack anymore. Like Sure Yen, the old man calmed down eventually. What you want to know is related to this stone. While talking, he took out a cube-shaped stone from his sleeve. That stone had some patterns that looked like natural drawings or formations. It held magical energy that made the patterns move and shimmer. The old man bared his teeth in a broad smile. He threw the stone at the ground. Try it again. Sure, Yen sent a wisp of soul consciousness into the purgatory token. Magically, the life magnetic of the old man was visible in the purgatory token. The token was even able to precisely sense the strength of his life energy. Sure Yan's eyes brightened. Studying the cube stone, he said with astonishment, "This stone can cut off the sensing of the purgatory token and keep my soul consciousness from detecting you." Yes, the old man smiled arrogantly. He quickly picked up the cube stone. With this gem, the contestants in the extreme purgatory field can't find me with their purgatory token. With this gem, I can enter 99 forbidden places of the extreme purgatory field easily without worrying about the barriers. The cube stone disappeared into his sleeve. Sure Yan's sensing did not work again. He couldn't use the purgatory token to lock the old man. Although they were standing face to face, his soul consciousness couldn't sense the living fluctuations of this old fella. This cube stone seemed to be able to hide the god's soul and the soul altar. It was a marvelous device. Where did you get it? Sure Yen was curious. I can't tell you. I can only say that there are several stones like this. Except for me, the others who keep this stone are all the craziest prisoners of the extreme purgatory field. After participating in the extreme purgatory field for several times, we agreed to keep this a secret. Even the owner of the divine nation, Du Tianji, doesn't know about it. The old man grinned. It is also why I've joined the extreme purgatory field 5 times but remained alive. If I encounter someone I can't fight, I hide in the forbidden places. Sure Yan's eyes brightened. He nodded, no wonder. Seems like you've had good encounters in the extreme purgatory field. You said there are 99 forbidden places like this place. Do they all have layers of barriers? Yes, 99 in total. I guess they're the formation eyes and the key nodes that contain the extreme purgatory field. The existences of the 99 forbidden lands maintain the balance and the magical effect of the extreme purgatory field. Only, while holding this square stone, can you get in there safely. The old man gazed at him, his eyes bizarre. It is shocking that you were able to get in here. How? As far as I've known, even I, at the third sky of King God Realm, can't get through such complicated barriers without this cube stone. I can't tell you either. Sure Yen beamed a faint smile. Everyone has his own secrets. If you don't want to talk much, neither will I. Fine. Now, I will take you somewhere. The old man pondered for a while, then smiled. Perhaps you will like it. Oh, right, I'm Jianggu. You? Sure Yen. Come with me. I'll take you there. The old man named Jiang didn't bother with the bloodstains on his body. He became more excited, walking quickly through the cottage to another place deeper inside the valley. Sure, Yen didn't linger. He nodded and followed him quietly. Flowers bloomed everywhere in this valley. Grass also present in the entire area. Water murmured. Fish swam. The whole place was peaceful and harmonious like a fairyland. No matter how hard people could imagine, they would never picture a wonderful place like this in the bloody extreme purgatory field. The forbidden lands were intimidatingly dangerous, but they also hid a different world. Jiang looked very familiar with this place. While walking deep into the valley, he explained, "Just like me, those who have the same cube stones occupy their own territory. Yeah, they're the forbidden places. 5 out of the 99 forbidden places are actually wonderful. You will see soon. Sure, Yen listened to him attentively before asking, if you stayed in the forbidden land of the extreme purgatory field after 3 years of bloody training, will people be able to detect you? Jianggu turned around, laughing. What do you think? People out there can't find you, can they? Shi Yen replied uncertainly. Of course not. I'm being honest. After each time I used my forbidden territory, I always got out. However, the 4 others who hold the territory of the 4 wonderful forbidden places have never left. They stay in the forbidden lands all the time. The owner of the divine nation deemed them dead. He doesn't know that they've survived and lived a better life. Since I have something to do, I have to go out. The other 4 consider the forbidden lands their home. They no longer want to leave. Jiang Ge didn't turn to see him. He explained before walking away. Shi Yan's eyes sparkled strangely, amazed at what he was hearing. If what this old man said was true, there were 4 other people like him in the extreme purgatory field with the cube stones. Despite the fact that the lands were harsh, they have stayed in extreme purgatory field for a long time. Age and realms for the other 4 were probably not normal. They must all be tough characters. Since they got the cube stones, even Du Tianji couldn't find them or know their situations. Although they can dodge the purgatory token sensing, why did they stay for several hundred years in the extreme purgatory field? Soon he realized the answer. Jiang Ge suddenly stopped, pointing at the end of the valley, and shouted, "Here we are." Shi Yen stopped walking. At first glance, he was dumbstruck. It was a grand palace. Stood between the 2 mountains at the end of the valley was a grand palace. The high mountain that jutted up to the sky provided shade for this palace. Thick clouds hovered above the palace like water ink that blocked light and didn't disperse. The grand palace radiated immense divine light. It looked like this palace was made of gold, jade, and gemstone. It was tall and pleasing to the eyes. Stone pillars stood in the center, supporting the palace. This scenery looked exactly like what you would find in a fairyland. At this moment, they were standing next to the nearest pillar, which could even shield the whole sky. Lifting up their heads to look at the palace, they felt so small. Magical energy, fluctuations, diffused from time to time from the foundation pillar of the palace. They rippled out like magnificent waves. Each wave had at least dozens of layers, and each layer was a magical barrier. They were all mysterious and conveyed the might of nature, which silenced them in awe. Instinctively, Shi Yen wanted to go in. Jiang Ge shouted all of a sudden, "Watch out!" Shi Yen halted, turning around to look at him with astonishment. Those rippling waves can easily take your life away. I've been here for so many years, but I can't dissolve it. You shouldn't take risks, all right? Jiang Ge grinned bizarrely. The other 4's situations aren't different from mine. They also have a grand palace like this in their forbidden places. Do you get why they aren't trying to leave so quickly now? Because of this palace? Shi Yen was surprised. Nodding, Jiang Ji's face was solemn. I can tell you that the 5 palaces in the extreme purgatory field should belong to the 5 previous imperial masters of the dark firmament divine nation. Du Tianji might know about this, but it is not certain. The former imperial masters hid something from the owner of the divine nation. That is why they didn't let him know about the mysteries of this place. I don't know what they hid in there, but I'm sure that these palaces have something. The other 4 also believe the same thing. They aren't hurrying to leave because they want to discover the secret. Sure, Yen discolored in fright. If I didn't have a reason, I would never leave this place. I would break the defense there and get into the palace to see what's in there. Jiang Ji's face was serious. Kid, I brought you here to tell you that. If you give me a purgatory token, I will give you the cube stone. Although I can't make it, I think you can. I can't wait here any longer. I need to leave. Just consider this an exchange. I'm sure you won't bear a loss. You got the cube stone, but you can't get in there. Sure, Yin didn't agree immediately. He was still suspicious. That stone can only bring me through the barriers of the forbidden place. I can't get in the palace. I've tried many times. My knowledge and power aren't enough to solve this problem. Perhaps my realm isn't enough. Jiang forced a smile. You have the third sky of King God Realm Cultivation Base, and you can't do anything. Why do you think I can? Sure, Yin burst out laughing, shaking his head. I won't be fooled. You don't want to fight, but you want to keep me in this place for the rest of my life. You want to use a secret to bind me. Good plan. Don't you want to know what is in there? Jiang frowned. I do, but I don't want to do things in vain. I don't want my efforts to be in vain by wasting time in this place where even birds don't want to poop. Sure, Yin shook his head. Birds don't even poop? Jiang didn't know whether to cry or smile. Kid, you don't know your fortune. Why did you say so? Once the 3 years of the training in the extreme purgatory field ends, the sensitive feelings towards earth and heaven powers will disappear. Why only 3 years? Because they can only hold it for 3 years. No more. After 3 years, the extreme purgatory field will be like other places. It won't be able to offer assistance to warriors and their realms. 94 out of the 99 forbidden areas will be the same. The energy there will disappear. However, the 5 forbidden areas with the palaces won't disappear. The sensitive sensing of natural energy will remain here forever. Jiang shouted. Sure, Yen was shaken. He finally understood the heavy conditions that this old man offered him. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.